What did I say about Han Solo?
What, recently?
Well, I mean, I said it quite a while back, but I said it wouldn't be good, and it's not.
Oh, okay. You know what? To be honest, I don't look at the reviews because the reviews they just cloud your mind, Luke.
Yeah. I mean, that's the whole point of the review. I should have
All
said
right,
that to Dylan.
I'm gonna look at the reviews now. Okay, you ready? Solo. Enter.
This is great.
What I've got isn't terrible.
Nah, it's like 70% on Rotten Tomatoes, isn't it? But considering the Attack of the Clones got 66% and Revenge of the Sith got 78%, I think.
I got you. Yeah. How much did Rogue One get?
Like 85, I think.
Okay, yeah, that's bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I don't know why people always tend to overrate Star Wars movies.
I think it's because people assume that other people are underrating it.
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of like the reason why everyone's like, oh, well, you know, the Phantom Menace, it's a 6 out of 10, is because they're like,
yeah.
Well, you know, it's a good franchise.
That movie is a straight up 1 out of 10.
I think I agree.
And the fact that it's got like 55% on Rotten Tomatoes, that confirms my theory. Also, what confirms my theory is the fact that The Last Jedi got 91%.
Well, yeah, the thing is that Rotten Tomatoes, it boggles my mind that it works the way it does, with it meaning that if something gets 55%, that means 55% of people said it was good.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So it's not just like 100% of people said Phantom Menace was average. If 100% of people said Phantom Menace was, 50%, I'd be like, okay, that's, whatever. But it's not that. It's that 55% of people said this was a good film. Insane.
Crazy.
Yeah, okay, we can have that as our cold intro. Yeah. Why not? Hello and welcome to Select and Reflect, the movie review podcast where we look at films that have come out relatively recently at the cinema. This week we will be... Are we still celebrating the release of Solo?
Yeah.
Even though it came out last week? Yeah, celebrating the release of Solo with our look at Star Wars: The Last Airbender.
That might be a better movie than this one, Michael, I'll tell you what.
Star Wars: The Last Jedi. And Luke. Oh wait, sorry, I am Michael, and I'm joined as always by Luke. Luke, why don't you tell us a little bit about The Last Jedi?
Well, I don't know why you're talking like that, Michael, but anyway, I'll tell you all a bit about The Last Jedi. This movie is called Star Wars: The Last Jedi, also known as Star Wars Episode 8: The Last Jedi. It's a 2017 American space opera film, written and directed by Rian Johnson, and is the second installment of the Star Wars sequel trilogy following Star Wars: The Force Awakens. It stars Mark Hamill, Carrie Fisher, Adam Driver, Daisy Ridley, John Boyega, Oscar Isaac, Andy Serkis, Lupita Nyong'o, Domhnall Gleeson, Anthony Daniels, Gwendolyn Christie, Kelly Marie Tran, Laura Dern, and Benicio del Toro. Came out on the 15th of December 2017, so quite a recent movie considering we normally review movies that have spent quite a long time away from the cinema, away from the box office. So do you want to have a guess at the budget, Michael?
Yeah, I don't really know, so I'm just going to go for 300 million.
It's actually 200 million.
Really? That's less than Rogue One.
That's less than Solo: A Star Wars Story. I checked the other day.
See, I was assuming that I've got a hint now for when we do Solo: A Star Wars Story next week.
In like 2 years' time,
yeah. So I was assuming, that the anthology films would have lower budgets just naturally. Like they'd, throw more money. Like, I know that it's possible to make a cheap. Like, I imagine that The Empire Strikes Back wouldn't cost that much to make. But, still, yeah, surprising. Yeah. 200 million.
Yeah.
I was off by quite a bit.
How much did it make at the box office?
See, the fact that Rogue One just made $1 billion, it makes... Now I'm completely thrown off, because you've got $1 billion on one hand and, over $2 billion on the other. Or was it just about $2 billion? It was just over $2 billion, wasn't it?
Yeah, just over, yeah.
And it's kind of like, I don't know where this lies in between that, because on the one hand, this is even further removed from the Star Wars is back hype. But on the other hand, this is the sequel to the film that started the Star Wars is back hype. So I'm going to split the difference, hedge my bets, and just say 1.5 billion.
1.332 billion.
I'm happy with that.
Yeah, that was a decent guess. So, like you said,
a cowardly guess, to be honest.
More than Rogue One, but quite a bit less than The Force Awakens.
Yeah,
Uh,
I did think it would be quite a bit less.
yeah, that's because I think one of the reasons why The Force Awakens was so popular is a lot of fans of Star Wars liked it. And obviously that's something we'll get into later. But obviously normally, well, we've been trying at this stage, Michael, to talk about the plot first, but I'm not going to do that. We're going to talk about nitpicks first instead.
I thought the first thing we're going to talk about, speaking about fans liking it,
Oh.
was, did you like this film?
I did not, no.
I'll tell you what I think about this film, Luke. You know what, it's really annoying because this morning I came up with a perfect summary of this film, and now I'm going to kind of do a bastardized, half-remembered version of it. I thought this film, it was a lot of good ideas, and a lot of stupid ideas, all put together in a broadly uninteresting whole.
Huh. Well,
that was my thoughts on this film. I thought there were a lot of ideas I really liked, a lot of ideas I thought were really stupid, and altogether, I just didn't really care.
Okay, well, we'll get into why you didn't care in the next 2 hours now.
Yes.
Yeah. So anyway, how many nitpicks have you got?
I think I've got 5.
I've got 1.
Okay. I feel like I could have got more, to be honest, but yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I could have as well, but...
Yeah, what was your 1?
My 1 is basically Leia floating into space.
Okay, see, I would put that kind of under. I mentioned that, but I mentioned it under plot. A lot of people have complained about that.
Yeah.
Do you want to expand on it at all?
Yeah, I'll just say like you could say more about it, but I didn't really have anything. Like it's kind of an isolated incident. There are a lot of problems with this film, which we'll get into, but that right there was just something that was just outright stupid and was on its own. Didn't have any other things to compare it to in this movie, so I just thought I'd put it in the nitpicks.
Yeah,
she looked like Mary Poppins. That's all you need to say.
Yeah, I did want to mention it, like I say later, but mine were okay, and this is most of what I meant when I said stupid decisions. And I guess some of these aren't that really stupid. But first of all, I thought it was ridiculously easy for the dreadnought to be destroyed. Like it's supposed to be this. I mean, I know this is a classic problem with Star Wars, like giant mega super weapon is destroyed by tiny thing.
Mm-hmm.
But this time it was like I could kind of excuse it in other circumstances because it's kind of like they use sneakiness. They're being sneaky. In this case, it's just a space battle. Send your troops or your flying things against their flying things.
Yeah.
And somehow, and considering how much they cock up, because I'm obviously talking about they've got these bombers, and all the bombers get destroyed, because which I also thought was just so stupid, like the fact that, like it just seems like that's the type of thing that shouldn't be able to happen, that your bombs can just get. I mean, maybe it just felt a bit dumb.
Yeah, you're right. I would agree. It was a bit dumb. Yeah.
And the fact that the one bomber on its own that survived the whole thing was able to take down the dreadnought like perfect, like it's a write-off, Luke. It's not even like they disabled it; they destroyed it.
Okay.
And you just think like, why even have these massive ships? Yeah. They could have made 20 smaller ships and been fine. Okay, next one. I want to say that it's pretty much impossible to survive 25,000 years, for Tex to survive 25,000 years. It's just, so obviously, for some reason, in the Star Wars expanded universe, I know the expanded universe isn't technically canon anymore, but I think they mentioned the whole 1,000 generations line, which, translates roughly to 25,000 years. The Star Wars universe is unnecessarily huge, like time-wise.
Yes.
There's no reason to have 25,000 years of implied history.
Well, the thing is, it's an epic, so obviously if it's an epic, you've got to have a lot of history.
I know, but think about the fact that pretty much all of human history happened in the last 2,500 years, and the rest of human history, which wasn't even that much, happened 2,500 years before that. I mean, the Persians, the Greeks, the Romans, all of that happened in the last 2,500 years. You just add on an extra 2,500 years and you get the Egyptians. We don't need an extra, you don't need to times that by 10.
Okay.
Like, right. we don't have any surviving texts from 500 BC.
Right.
And they're saying that 10 times that length anyway, yeah, so I just thought that was kind of silly.
Okay, good point.
The thing is, they could have just had, it could have just been copies, but they literally said these are the original texts. Anyway, the scene where they free the kind of rabbit horses from Canto Bice, is it called Canto Bice?
Canto Blight, I believe, yes.
Canto Blight, because it's a blight on the earth.
Oh, wow.
And so stampedes murder many people, and if you set a bunch of horses free in a crowded room, you would kill people. And in this, should have been people dying, or they at least should have acknowledged. The film should have acknowledged that what they did was just definitively lethal. And these are bigger than horses. Anyway, next one.
Okay.
They're being pursued by, this is getting texted now. This is Poe Dameron. he's on this massive ship. Everyone's on this massive ship, and they're being slowly followed by the First Order. Yeah. And the whole thing is like they're running out of fuel. And I honestly feel like there must be an explanation for this, but I couldn't see it. Why are they sending out these tiny, small ships to, like in the middle, they send out these small ships to just get destroyed by the Dreadnought. And I'm thinking, number one, why are they even sending out those tiny ships to be destroyed? And number two, isn't that using up fuel?
I mean, they didn't know they'd be in a situation in which they would have to conserve fuel, though, Michael.
Well,
because at the time they didn't know they were going to get tracked through hyperspace or whatever.
Well, maybe I'm just got a bit more forethought than them. All right, anyway, and the last one again. This one is like really stupid. I'd almost be surprised if you didn't write this down at a different point. I had to.
Is it going to be the one I think it is?
The bit where Rose crashes into Finn. You know what? Okay, so here's the thing. As I do not rush to see most films at the cinema, and I didn't rush to see this film. So I'd pretty much heard most of the major things about it before I went into it. And I'd heard about the fact that Rose smashes into Finn. So I was kind of thinking, I was thinking to myself, like, okay, this is going to be done. But I thought it would be like kind of, she nudges him with his wing, which causes him to go off course. That's what I thought it would be like. She drives in, she kind of budges into him, or, bumps into him, he goes off course, and then he kind of loses control, and then he comes to a semi-controlled landing, and he's like, why did you do that? Why did you not... No, instead, she smashes into him from the side, like it's the end of No Country for Old Men, and then the ship disintegrates into debris, and
it is a ridiculous moment that I was going to talk about later.
Yeah, I thought you would.
On my Rose and Finn section. Yes. But yeah, it's truly stupid. You are correct.
All right, and that is all of our nitpicks. So now it's time to go into the thing that you want to go. Is your next thing? Well, tell me what your next thing is, Luke. I think I remember, but there's no point in me guessing and being wrong.
Here's the thing, Michael. This is the time in our podcast that we normally talk about the plot. I give a summary of the plot, and it's like a few sentences long, and basically describes what's happening in the movie. So, for example, in The Force Awakens, it's all about getting the map to Luke Skywalker, for instance. And obviously, you can look at our past podcast to see me doing that one paragraph sum up of the plot. In this movie, though, it's impossible to do that.
Yeah.
It is not possible to do a sum up of the plot, because this movie
so dense.
is about...
There's so much going on.
Yeah. But I'll just say this, Michael. This movie is about nothing. Nothing significant happens in this movie. Watching the Red Letter Media review, as I'm sure you did as well, Jay Barman said it was like wheel spinning the movie. And that's true. There's nothing that is significant that happens in this movie. And the only one I can think of is that Luke Skywalker dies. Even Snoke's death doesn't matter because he was an irrelevant character. He played no part in Episode 7, for instance. But even when talking about Luke Skywalker's death, he wasn't in the first movie. And obviously he doesn't do anything in The Last Jedi, except show up at the end and help the Resistance escape. If you had never seen any other Star Wars movie, and had no idea about the Star Wars universe, this movie would, I think, be very unsatisfying. You don't know why you should care about Luke dying.
Yes.
And nothing else happens that can be described as meaningful. Rey and Kylo Ren teaming up, like, what happens would be meaningful. But at the end of the movie, they just go back to where they were in the first place.
Yeah.
So this is why I'm saying, like, what can you sum up what this movie is about? What is The Last Jedi about?
You know what? I mean, I think you could possibly do two words. The thing is, it's such a kind of weird summary to give, because of course you could say this film is about the First Order pursuing the rebellion, and
But then
Rey
you say,
learning
is
to
that
be
it?
a Jedi.
Well, shouldn't that happen
Yeah,
anyway?
it is.
Like, isn't that what you expected going into the movie? These things
Yes,
to happen?
this film. Yeah, I think you're quite. It's almost like this film is sort of a deconstructed version of a Star Wars film, in that like it takes the bare bones of a Star Wars story, of a Rogue One, a
Yeah.
Star Wars story, and it says so. You've got like obviously the villains pursue the protagonists, the hero learns things, but in this it's literally just like, oh, that's it. The villains pursue the protagonists, the hero learns
Yeah.
things.
And that's the thing, like, when evaluating this movie, I don't think it's possible to just skip over this. Like, the fact that there's no meat to this movie.
Yeah.
There's nothing in there that you would say, oh, this is what this movie is about. If I'm asked to sum up this movie, this is what I'd say about it. Like, characters do stuff, like you said, it's got the usual tropes of a Star Wars movie, but at the end of the day, I can't pinpoint anything that actually happened in this movie. Like I said, that's significant.
You know what, Luke? There are two things I think about with regards to this film. Number one is obviously the traditional Star Wars structure. And one of the things that I notice about Star Wars, not always, but especially like the original Star Warses and the prequels, is that it's kind of like each part of the film is broadly associated with a particular area. So, the first one, it starts off on Tatooine, and then it moves to the Death Star, and then it goes to the Rebel base. The second one, it starts off on Hoth, and then it goes to Dagobah, and then to Cloud City. It's like clear places. In this one, it just stays kind of in the same. And then the other one I think about is the Star Wars Lego games, because basically the Star Wars Lego games are fun, and one of the things about them is each film is divided up into 6 discrete missions. So just to give you an idea, the Phantom Menace one, you've got negotiations where you're kind of on the Trade Federation ship, and then you go down to Naboo where you meet Jar Jar. That's mission 2, and then you go to rescue Queen Amidala from Naboo. There's 6. So 4th is you have the pod race. 5th is you go back to Naboo and kind of defeat the Trade Federation, and then the 6th one is the fight with Darth Maul. Pretty basic, and you can imagine how that translates. In this one, what on earth would be, because they so far made a Force Awakens Star Wars Lego game, and again it had the same structure but what on earth would they possibly do as the 6 Star Wars Lego games for this? And I kind of just think about that, like, what would they do, Luke? You'd have
I don't know.
Walk around this island and in Scotland.
It's an island, actually.
Is it an island? Island.
An island. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. An island. Yeah, that's a good point. You had the Kylo Ren and Rey fighting the Snoke's guards. I can't really think of much more than that. You'd have the space battle at the start with Poe defeating the Dreadnought.
Yeah.
But maybe Finn and Rose on Canto Blight? I don't know.
This film had a weird absence of conflict, or it did have conflict, but it wasn't like normal people conflict. It was very kind of subtle conflict, and like that could be good in like a different context. Like if this film was a political drama set in the real world, then the idea of having a conflict over how to deal with that film about the Cuban Missile Crisis. If this was a film about the Cuban Missile Crisis, how do we deal with this situation? Loads of people arguing. Then that would be fine. But it's not.
It's not. It's going to be a space adventure film.
It doesn't feel self-contained.
No.
There's no internal mystery.
Yeah, to sum up, I just don't think there's a story here.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, obviously, that is one of the criticisms. I mean, there's many more, but that is one of the most major ones.
It's a criticism, and it also makes the film kind of difficult to review, apart from just saying, like, it doesn't have a story in, like, a really weird way, where it's like, it's not even trying to have a story. And you're just like, what? Like, it's like such a bizarre... I think this is the weirdest Star Wars film to kind of assess the quality of. Because you're like, well, I mean, it just doesn't feel like a Star Wars film at all.
Yeah. And so I think, obviously, one of the criticisms that we need to go into, and that's the thing, while reviewing this movie, we're just going to list some of the stuff that happens. Like, and just conclude that overall it was just a bit of a mess. Well, that's what I'm going to do anyway.
Yeah.
So starting off, I think the biggest thing that came out of this movie that people praised and also criticised, and the actual biggest, I guess, plot points or what's this movie about, is the fact that this movie subverts expectations.
Yeah.
I.e., it's unpredictable, does things that you would not expect it to do.
Well, last week I spoke about our favourite film series, the Resident Evil film series, and I talked about what I officially call the Resident Evil Afterlife effect, which is you set up loads of things in a film, and then it's just designed to put butts in seats for the next film, and then people show up, and the person who comes in says, well, I don't really know what to do with any of that, so they literally just get rid of it all.
Yeah, so obviously Rian Johnson didn't like The Force Awakens. He was one of the people who wasn't a fan of that movie, so he decided to change a lot of stuff. And I just want to say before we get into these expectations which were subverted, being unpredictable is not a good thing in itself. Just because the audience didn't expect something to happen, it doesn't mean that it was a good choice or a bold choice. Things have got to be interesting and, I guess, work and also be satisfying for these things which would be unpredictable to actually be good. The first expectation, which is subverted, or I don't know, does that work? Anyway, so basically Luke decides that he's going to chuck his lightsaber away.
Yes.
And this undercuts, I think, a memorable moment from Episode 7 where Rey hands Luke Skywalker his lightsaber. And obviously this was, like I said, right at the end of Episode 7. It was the final shot leaving the cinema, and it kind of set you up for Episode 8. It's like, oh, we've got this to look forward to. This could have been an iconic moment in Star Wars, Rey handing Luke his lightsaber. But instead, with Luke chucking his lightsaber away and it being made out to be a joke, like I said, it undercuts this moment and makes it worthless and pointless.
Well, yeah.
And so that is one expectation which was subverted, which was a bad choice.
For me, it's in I think pretty much every single expectation that you're going to list here. Just I'm gonna put my trust in you to list all the expectations because
Oh yeah. I'll do that. Yeah.
In every expectation you're going to list here, I think my opinion on each one is going to be it's not a bad idea in principle, and I think it's possibly even a good idea, but there was a lot wrong with the way it was handled. And in this case, I don't have a problem with Luke rejecting the Jedi. Him saying, I don't want to be a Jedi anymore.
Well, yeah, we'll get into the whole of that later.
Yeah, but I just want to say that the thing that bothered me, like you said, is the way it was played as a joke, which is kind of, because it almost seems like, it's not like serious. It's not like, it actually matters that he is rejecting the Jedi. It's just like, oh, look, you didn't expect that.
Yeah.
And
didn't expect that.
Yeah, I mean, like you say, we'll talk about kind of, because the way that kind of plot point of Luke rejecting the Jedi unfolds is also kind of a problem. And we'll go into that. But like I said, in theory, you could write Luke rejecting the Jedi into a really interesting story. And again, that's why I say it's a lot of good ideas and a lot of stupid decisions that go together to form. Yeah. Anyway, next expectation.
So the next case of subverting expectations is when Snoke dies. Snoke is killed by Kylo Ren after Snoke says that Kylo Ren has to kill Rey. And so, in principle, this is kind of what you were saying just before. In principle, I think I'm fine with this. As mentioned before, in the when I'm talking about the movie and the fact that it doesn't have a story, Snoke dying is fine because he's irrelevant. So it's fine to kill him off. He didn't have an impact in The Force Awakens, so him dying makes sense. It makes the story more interesting. I think it works. However, I just wanted to talk about the way they do it. I think it's awful, basically. If you watch the movie, it's so obvious that Kylo Ren is going to kill Snoke. Like, the way the lightsaber turns, and the way it's just played out, so, like, Christ on a bike. Like, it was, you could see it like a mile away. If you were blind, Michael, you could see it.
Yes.
Absolutely horribly executed. And that moment could have been a good moment. It could have been like, oh, I didn't expect that, and actually, you know what, I like that. I think it works for the story. But again, the way it was executed was horrible as well.
Yes, I pretty much agree with everything you said. Yeah, it's a good idea, and like you say, a very kind of logical idea, given that Snoke, he's not an interesting character. He's not Darth Vader. He's not even Darth Maul.
Yeah.
He's just
he's not.
the Emperor.
He's not interesting. He's not interesting and didn't have a role in Episode 7.
But yeah, like you say, the fact that he was just it wasn't interesting. You know what it reminded me of though? I have to talk about this. Speaking of Star Wars games again, there was a Star Wars Revenge of the Sith game, and at the end of it, and I remember this, you played, because it basically pretty much followed the story of Star Wars Revenge of the Sith verbatim.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of it, you defeat Obi-Wan Kenobi. Oh, sorry. Oh, I know. Okay, yeah. So you have like a bonus mission at the end, and it's like if you defeat Obi-Wan Kenobi, I remember how it works now. If you defeat Obi-Wan Kenobi, then you kind of appear to the Emperor, and he says, "Good job, Darth Vader. We shall rule the galaxy." And then Anakin takes his lightsaber, kills the Emperor, and says, "No, the Empire is mine." Like, I mean, that sounds like cheesy, but like, and the thing is, like, it blew my mind as a kid, like, because you don't expect it. You don't expect, you don't expect to. First of all, you don't expect to win the game as Anakin. It's like a little bonus if you manage to win. So you win the game as Anakin, and then you're like, oh, he's won, and then suddenly he kills the Emperor, and it's the craziest thing. And I was thinking about that when I was watching it, and it's like a video game to entertain little 12-year-old kids who liked Revenge of the Sith did a better job at kind of like subverting the apprentice kills the master thing than this. Yeah. What's the next subversion, Luke?
Yeah, so drawn out. So the next subversion is the fact that Rey's parents, it is revealed, were nobodies.
Yes.
And I have a problem with this, Michael.
You do.
So this isn't one of the ones where I'm like, oh, it was executed poorly. Well, actually, it was executed poorly as well. But the thing is, one of the reasons to watch this movie, if you've just seen Episode 7, and like, these new Star Wars movies, is that you wanted to find out what's the deal with Rey's parents. This movie spends 30 seconds on what should be a big thing, and that's why the execution is bad. But also, like, the idea in theory is bad, because, like I said, you've set up this thing in Episode 7, and you just don't go in a different direction to what's expected, like, oh, she's this Jedi's daughter or whatever, or Obi-Wan's daughter, or Han and Rey's daughter, Han and Leia's daughter, or Luke's daughter. You then go in a different direction to what maybe would have been expected. They went in no direction at all. Like, they just said, oh yeah, they're drunk. Like, they're just some drunkards. That's what Kylo Ren said. And obviously, if you were to watch Episode 7, you would think it was going to be really interesting to find out who her parents were. But instead, it doesn't matter. And I think this is where the lack of planning in these sequels really hurts. Obviously, all these expectations had to be subverted because Rian Johnson didn't like The Force Awakens and wanted to change a lot of stuff. And Disney said, yeah, you can change whatever you want. So he decides to change all the stuff. But this is where I think it really shows that was a bad idea, because Rey's parents in Episode 7 were given a pivotal plot point, and just to disregard this in The Last Jedi, I think was a really bad choice.
So, you know what, you just reminded me about what it was that I was going to say when I tried to say something and then forgot what I was going to say, which was that Disney only have themselves to blame for all of the problems with this film.
Yes.
Because, they didn't plan ahead. And it's like, it's so bizarre to me that you can actually tell that J.J. Abrams, and like, that's the thing, like, I guess like a lot of people kind of feel sorry for J.J. Abrams because they're like, oh, he set up all these things, and then they didn't, get fulfilled. But like, it's kind of, if you set up all these things, then you need to have an explanation or like an idea in his head. And I'm gonna just assume that if he did, like, I've not seen anything to imply that J.J. Abrams actually had any ideas that he put forward that were ignored. It seems as if he literally set up all this stuff and said, well, someone else will deal with it, and then of course someone else didn't want to deal with it. So yeah, they could have, said, well, let's write a coherent story, establish pretty much every line of dialogue from episode. Like, it's not that hard, Luke. Just write 3 screenplays and say, writing 3 one-page synopsises would have made a big difference. And they didn't even do that, but, write 3 screenplays.
Actually, J.J. Abrams did write a draft for Episode 8 and Episode 9.
Ooh.
Rian Johnson tore it up and said, I don't want this. I think Daisy Ridley revealed that.
Really? Okay, well, like I say, I'm not quite, I can only go off what I know. But anyway, as for the actual specific thing of Rey's parents, I guess something else I was going to say this with Snoke, but there's a sense in which subverting expectations was almost made necessary in this film, because the problem I had with The Force Awakens is that it felt to me like it was trying to force a mystery. And the problem with doing that is that people are going to speculate. And therefore,
Yes.
whatever happens is going to disappoint people, no matter what, because people are always going to have their own ideas of what happened. Whereas, for example, nobody...
No, I'm going to disagree with you there, Michael. Not necessarily. Look, I said to you before what I wanted out of Rey's parents. I said my idea, which I'll say it now again. Luke Skywalker was the one that actually dropped Rey off in Jakku, because she was so imagine she was an orphan, so she didn't have any parents, but it was Luke Skywalker who dropped her off and erased her memory with his Force powers, because she had the dark side in her, and he trained her for a bit at his Jedi training place, wherever it was, but realized I can't train this person. Like they've just got too much of the dark in them, so I'm going to drop them off in a desolate place, and never see them again, because he doesn't want another Darth Vader.
Well,
and obviously that didn't happen. I think that would have been interesting.
Yeah.
But I would be fine if something was interesting. I just wanted something interesting. You set this up in episode 7 and you just fucking push it out of the way. Like, give me something that is satisfying. Give me something that makes it work. It's okay if it's not what I expect, but just please, make it interesting.
I mean, obviously, the thing is, because, for example, you would like that, and I guess, it's I think probably reasonable people would have been satisfied with quite a bit, but there are a lot of people who, I guess the other problem is that you can't, it's very difficult, and there is a desire to defy expectations, because the thing is, obviously, you go back to the classic, Darth Vader is Luke's father, and that worked, because there were no 2 million view YouTube videos made in the 1970s and early 1980s about, who is Luke's father? Theory.
Yeah, I know, but...
And the thing is, obviously, and that
even
meant
then, though,
that you could surprise people. The thing with this is that you don't want to say, well, Rey's father was Jar Jar Binks, and then, everyone's like, oh, look, the fan theory on YouTube that said Rey's father was Jar Jar Binks was right, and it just kind of feels like almost hollow to be like, oh well, this fan theory was the correct one and that one was not. So I think in a sense you're stuck in an awkward position if your goal.
But the thing is, okay, Rian Johnson didn't create the mystery. That was J.J. Abrams' fault. But he didn't he still deserves some of the blame because he didn't have to then go and just throw it in the bin.
Well,
he could have done something with it. He could have been right, I've been dealt a bad hand, even though I'm directing Star Wars. I've been dealt a bad hand, I'm going to make the best out of it. I'm not just going to, throw this hand in the bin and just ruin, episode 7.
I would say
a segment of episode
there's an interesting idea, which I do kind of like, which is that, that a lot of people are saying, well, maybe Kylo lied to Rey. And obviously I don't think...
I know, but then that would be ridiculous if they, again, just make it something different in episode 9.
I see, the thing is, I mean, everyone kind of talks about it as if it's, as if it's backtracking, which it obviously would be. But I think the thing is, there's no reason to think that Kylo would have any reason to know. So, obviously I don't really care, that much. But I do think, for example, you could make an argument that it's not... This is probably one of the less, completely ruined. I mean, I agree that it's bad, but to be honest, Luke, I'm going to actually have to say the more substantial thing, which is that I think I somewhat disagree with your essential premise. I don't have a problem with the idea that Rey was nobody's father.
No.
Oh, sorry,
Michael,
nobody's.
I agree.
I get what you're saying.
I don't have a problem with it, but he set it up in episode 7 that it was something that should be significant.
I think,
and you just throw it away. That's the problem.
This would be my counter, that the significance was in the significance she attached to it. Because the thing is, okay...
Yeah, but the movie attached it. She's attached, but the movie is what... Rey does what the movie says. Rey does what episode 7 says, so if Rey's attaching significance to it, well then the movie's attaching significance to it.
Here's the thing though, okay? You say that you don't mind that her parents were nobody, and that the problem is that the film set them up as somebody. But if if her parents were nobody and the film hadn't set them up as anybody, then that would be like pointless. And to me, I found the idea.
What do you mean? If they set them up as nobody?
So, well, in other words, so for example, if I'm trying to think of a good. Okay, so if, for example, in Revenge of the Sith or Attack of the Clones, Count Dooku says to Obi-Wan Kenobi, "Your parents were just drunkards who abandoned you." Then okay, his parents haven't been set up as anybody, so it doesn't really matter. But so my question would be, how could you? Because what I liked about the reveal that Rey's parents were nobody is that you assume that all the bad things that happen to you in your life have a purpose, and it's kind of like you buy into a grand narrative that everything's going to work out in the end, and that there's some greater meaning to it all, and the existential challenge that Rey has to deal with, which in my opinion is possibly the most interesting thing that happens in the entire. I agree that it also wasn't handled very well, but the most interesting thing that happened in the film to me was Rey having to be like, oh no, turns out that all this stuff about this wonderful origins I have, this classic age-old story of the orphan, they've got noble blood or fantastic heritage or things like that, is nonsense, and I was just abandoned and things like that. And also, so I'm going to have to I'm sorry, I know I'm going on a bit of a thing.
Yeah, is that interesting?
But here's the thing,
interesting?
And then what you have in addition to that is she has, and this, I find this interesting, she is clearly remarkable, and I know that there's criticisms of her being as remarkable as she is, but I'm going to have to add a little tangent to my tangent. A big criticism a lot of people had of Rey being nobody is they said that it made her Mary Sue-ness more inexplicable. They said, well, if she was the child of a great Jedi, it would make more sense that she was, so fantastic at everything. And I don't really agree with that, but I will say, she is clearly really fantastic. She's a really great Force master. And yet, despite that, being told that she is not the descendant of anyone great should destroy her. And like I say, in this film, I don't think it's done very well, but I like the idea of, this person who is actually fantastic and actually a really great Jedi is completely distraught at the idea that she doesn't have these miraculous, incredible origins, is kind of like an interesting look at psychology.
No, because she never thought that she had miraculous, incredible origins. She never thought that. She just didn't think. She thought that her parents were coming back for her.
Well, yeah, okay,
She just wanted to see her parents.
I get that. Okay, yeah.
But another thing about this thing about it's interesting that she has to deal with this. Well, I guess it is interesting, but and it's not her that's putting this idea that her parents are like Luke Skywalker and somebody else. But that's what Episode 7 does. It does set it up that way. So yeah, you can say like, it is kind of interesting that she has to deal with this and she's so distraught, but she doesn't really deal with it, and she's not that distraught about it. And like I said, I just don't find it interesting if you make it so that it has significance.
I think that I am kind of going to disagree. I mean, the problem is, like I say, it's a bit of a hot mess because I didn't really care about Force Awakens. I didn't really care about this film, and I think that the way this film handled the situation was obviously bad. So it's kind of like you're talking very abstractly when you're kind of dealing with this. So in those abstract terms, if there was a film that was good, so we'll say an Episode 7 that had a very clear, coherent plot, and we'll say that it had a Episode 8 that actually built on Episode 7 in every single way, but it had the additional fact that Rey's parents were set up as something that was significant in the first one, but were disregarded as drunkards who weren't significant in the second one. That would I would be okay with that, if in that context of it being the rest of the film kind of continuing to build up the significance of the wider story, because in that context it's like the one thing that, because like I said, I mean, the thing is, it's kind of the who her parents are, or even, for example, what her exact origins were. In your case, for example, it doesn't really matter who her parents are. You say you'd be happy if she was an orphan, but for example, Luke Skywalker dropping off.
Well, yeah, it's just about the backstory. Like, her backstory, obviously, you would assume it would have something to do with her parents, but if it's Luke Skywalker that dropped her off, you know what, that would subvert expectations, and it would be interesting as well.
Yes, I suppose the thing is, I could easily imagine somebody sitting at, like me, I probably wouldn't come up with this idea, but I would happily, sit down and be like, imagine someone said, "Hey, Michael, we want you to write the Star Wars trilogy from Episode 7 to Episode 9, a coherent story." And I kind of wrote it down, and then I said, I had in Episode 7, Rey's parents, Rey has these dreams about her parents running away, she's constantly waiting for her parents, blah, blah, blah. And then I go up to random person at the Starbucks where I'm writing my film, and I say, I just can't think of a way to end or continue this storyline of Rey's parents. And that person said to me, well, what if you wrote it so her parents were just nobody and they abandoned her for completely selfish reasons, and really her parents are arseholes, and then she loses hope and she kind of falls into despair, and then the things she has to learn and the narrative of her as a character is having to learn that where she comes from isn't what defines her as where she's going. If someone said it to me like that, I'd be like, okay, that makes complete sense to me, and I'd write it down in my thing.
Yeah, she doesn't acknowledge that. There's
Yes.
no acknowledgement of that.
Yeah, exactly.
So, Michael, basically to conclude on the whole Rey subversion thing, I just think in Episode 7 they set it up too much. It was too much of a setup just to disregard it. And obviously you feel that it was fine to... If it was executed properly, it was fine to have her parents be nobodies. That sum it up well?
Yeah, that does sum it up. And I guess it's time now to move on to the next subversion. How many subversions are there? I can't think of what the next one would be.
I got three more, Michael.
Really? I'm actually struggling to think what they are, so I'm ready for this.
So the first one is it's a small one, but the Codebreaker, Benicio del Toro's character.
Oh yeah.
They get betrayed by him, and the thing is, this subversion is again quite pointless because they just needed to get caught. There was no need for them to be betrayed. It doesn't add anything really to the story. And so, yeah, that was my thoughts on that one. I just thought wondered if you had any thoughts on that.
Well, obviously with this is the first subversion that we've looked at so far where it's not going off something established by J.J. Abrams. Yeah, I mean, it was a weird thing. I mean, it kind of falls under the general category of this film kind of feeling pointless, and that obviously, therefore, a lot of the internal twists within this film also feel kind of pointless. Seeing as it's hard to really get a feel for this B plot being even that much of a story. You don't really know how to feel about the twist. It's like, okay, well, I mean, I'm trying to think if there's actually been any betrayals. I guess the obvious betrayal would be the Cloud City one with Lando Calrissian.
Yeah, Lando, yeah.
But yeah, that one you don't expect it. Well, that one obviously it's because Lando Calrissian is kind of blackmailed into it, or not blackmailed, threatened into it, coerced into it. In this
Way
one,
to make it a race thing, Michael.
And this one, the guy just wants money. I guess the kind of weird thing is when is that he gives that and I just thought about this just now. The medallion he gets from the Asian woman. Obviously you think
you mean Rose, by the way.
Yeah, Rose. You think that he's being evil, or I guess you would say kind of like Han Solo-ish, and that he's like, well, I'll do anything for a price. And then obviously the first twist is that he's like, actually, I didn't want to use this for money. I wanted to use it because it's a good conductor or something. But then of course it makes no sense, because if he was planning on betraying them, why did he why did he not take that money? Like if they already think that they've given you the medallion as a payment, so they're not expecting to get it back from you, why would you be like, oh, I'm going to give... Because I assume the medallion was worth something. So why was he like, oh, I'm going to give them the medallion back just to betray them later on? Because they already trusted him. It was completely pointless that he gave them the medallion back when you think about it.
Yeah.
So like nothing about... Yeah. It did feel a bit like kind of like a twist for the sake of a twist that you kind of thought... And the problem is, I mean, in a way, it's kind of... loads of twists on top of loads of twists. Because they go to Canto Blight. Like, that entire plot line was so many twists. It was like, they go to Canto Blight, he thinks it's nice. Oh, actually, no, okay, so first of all, you've got Rose. She says it's horrible. You go there, and it looks really nice. And then Finn's like, oh, it looks really nice. And then Rose is like, actually, it's horrible because look, they're abusing animals.
We can get into the side.
Okay, yeah. But the thing is, like, obviously, just
Yeah.
talking about the Codebreaker guy, because that's the more relevant stuff, you think he's just some crazy loser, then he actually succeeds, then he runs away, then he comes up and picks them up at the end, then he says he's going to help them, but then he asks for money from them, then he gives them the money back, then it turns out he's betrayed them. And it's like, okay, there's just so many, you know, they've never established him being one particular way, so it's not interesting when he turns.
Yeah, it doesn't, like you said, it doesn't add anything to the story.
Yeah.
Also, he makes this point that there's no real difference between the Resistance and the First Order because they both buy weapons from the same weapons dealer, which I thought was a bit weird that you have that in your movie. Like,
yeah, you're right. That makes no sense as logic, does it? Like,
like the whole point of the movie is it's the good guys versus the bad guys. Why would you put this into the movie?
Like, it would make, the thing is, like, obviously, like, it makes the weapons dealers look bad. Like, obviously it's, like, if it was, like, for example, it makes sense in Iron Man, where it's the weapons dealer who's being, but in this, it's like, well, you're not the weapons dealer. Why would you, it's just stupid.
Yeah, it is just stupid. So next up, we've got, our next subversion, which is Luke is actually a Force ghost at the end.
Oh,
He's
yeah.
not actually there. Which I think was, I mean, I like the fact that he was there. At least he just had something to do at the end of the movie. But it's a bit shit when you realise he doesn't actually sacrifice himself and he's not actually there.
Well, yeah, the other thing is, sorry, I'm just going to say, it's completely pointless that he's a Force ghost, because he, apart from the fact that he obviously appears to be indestructible, they could have had it, so, and I know this would be, like, completely OP, but they could have made it so that he was so, powerful with the Force that he literally did become indestructible, and then he allowed himself to die, like, kind of the same way that Obi-Wan Kenobi did. But in this, it's like, he doesn't get killed by Kylo, but then he dies anyway because he's just, tired or something.
Yes. He's used all his Force energy. His Force energy is now down to 0, and so he has to go and die.
Yeah.
But the thing is, I was expecting, in watching it in the cinema, to have like a fight between Kylo Ren and Luke Skywalker. Because as Mike in Red Letter Media Review pointed out, at no point does a lightsaber hit another lightsaber in the entire movie.
It's kind of incredible.
Yeah, and so I was expecting, okay, this is going to be the fight, it's going to be a really epic fight between two people who obviously don't like each other. But no, just Luke isn't there. He just dodges some stuff.
Yeah.
So, again, more subverting of expectations. There isn't a lightsaber fight in this entire Star Wars movie.
Well, the other thing is, obviously, there's been some areas that it's been pretty obvious where this film kind of draws off of Empire Strikes Back. But a really big thing is that in Attack of the Clones, one of the big criticisms of that was that Yoda used a lightsaber, and everyone kind of said, "Oh, Yoda, he should be beyond using a lightsaber. He should be kind of just so powerful and kind of spiritual and sophisticated that he isn't reduced down to the level of throwing around a little laser sword and going to town." And this is kind of like, again, like, obviously it's a subversion of expectations, but it's kind of almost like, it's like somebody took that and they were like, okay, people didn't like that Yoda used a lightsaber in this one, and he was, the wise Jedi Master in Attack of the Clones and Phantom Menace. So we're going to go beyond that. We're not going to have anyone. So it kind of is like they took all the things that people disliked from the other films, or all the things that were kind of established conventions from the other films, and said, we're not going to have any of them.
They went too far though.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, especially in this one. By the way, Luke earlier in the movie says laser sword.
I know, I noticed that. I almost felt that must have been a reference.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I feel like the people who make Star Wars must be aware of Mr. Plinkett. Like,
oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, J.J. Abrams definitely was. Like, a lot of the criticisms of the prequels by Mr. Plinkett.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Mike Staccato. I had to call him his real name. Were obviously not in The Force Awakens, so he may have had a helping hand in that.
Yeah, I agree. It seems very likely that they would be aware of it.
Our final subversion of expectations is the fact that Luke has also abandoned the Force and the Jedi. And in theory, I think this should be interesting. It should be something that It's like, oh, that's an interesting turn. I did not expect that. But I think the problem is with this character, Michael, Luke Skywalker specifically abandoning the Force, is think of how Luke was in the original trilogy, and it's kind of unbelievable that he would turn out to be like this. He's literally like the embodiment of hope. And obviously the first Star Wars movie was called A New Hope, and that was in reference to Luke Skywalker. So to see him give up on the Force and Kylo Ren, he taunts Kylo Ren at the end when they're having their fight and says like, "Oh, see you later, kid," or something like that. It doesn't make sense at all because his character was very optimistic. His character was hopeful. His character didn't give up on Darth Vader. Yeah, he's giving up on Kylo Ren when Kylo Ren, to some degree, is still conflicted.
Yeah.
So here's the thing, like, I think it's interesting, but it's an interesting concept, but with Luke Skywalker, it just doesn't work because of the pre-established movies. And I think this is where Star Wars fans had their biggest grievance with this movie. Obviously, it's not popular amongst Star Wars fans, and that's what I want to get onto next. But the fact that they love the originals, because of, obviously, Luke Skywalker, one of the main characters in it, being such a great, hopeful, optimistic character, like I said, and then to have The Last Jedi kind of ruin it by saying, he turns into this depressing old man who now hates everything. I can understand why they would have felt this way.
Yeah. One of the things with Luke in particular is, I guess maybe you know this, Mark Hamill. He's obviously very famous in live action for playing Luke Skywalker, but
yes,
he's been far more prominent and far more active in voice acting, playing the Joker. So obviously, it's part of me almost feels like Mark Hamill. He likes the idea of being a bit kind of villainous. There was a line in particular which I really noticed where Kylo Ren says basically, "Have you come to persuade me, to try and change me, to win me over?" And Luke basically, he just says like, "No."
Yeah, that is something that the old Luke Skywalker would never do.
Yeah,
he would be like, "If you want to, I can give you help," but no, he just says, "No, not into it."
It's a very kind of weird. There's like two weird things going on at once. There is kind of the psychological aspect of Luke abandoning the Force, and then there is the kind of philosophical aspect of the Jedi being a bad idea. And they're kind of like both going on simultaneously, because it's not just that Luke has given up on hope. It's not just that he is pessimistic or cynical or anything like that. He is all of those things, but it's not just that. It's presented to the audience in a kind of package of, and also here are all these criticisms of the Jedi. And for example, Yoda basically shows up and kind of reaffirms or like validates that by burning the old Jedi texts. So it's kind of like clearly it's not saying that Luke is wrong to be skeptical or kind of like critical of the Jedi, because the film very much seems to imply that's correct. But then one of the things that's instrumental to him being critical of the Jedi is the fact that he seems to have abandoned hope. And the film kind of does that, but it kind of doesn't, because he's still really cynical and pessimistic when he fights Kylo Ren. It's not like he's not done a 180. He's not like, we can fight together. He's just kind of shown up and be like, I'm going to defeat the bad guy. And it doesn't work.
Mark Hamill, by the way, just to cut in, because you said Mark Hamill likes playing villains, because obviously he plays the Joker. Mark Hamill, if you've seen any interviews that he's given, Michael, about The Last Jedi, he said numerous times in these interviews, like, I can't believe he was written that way. Luke's meant to be optimistic.
Oh, okay.
He would never do this. This isn't Luke Skywalker. And he said Rian Johnson tried to convince him, or it took a lot of convincing him to get him on board. And even then, you can see he's still not happy about it. Like, he's very clear. He said, like, Luke shouldn't be written this way. Like, This is not Luke Skywalker. So he was very upset with this choice. And obviously that mirrors a lot of Star Wars fans.
Yeah. See, I like, there's something, I kind of like the idea of having a good guy who is kind of ruthless. So I like the idea of having a good guy who's going to be like, I'm just going to kill you. I'm not going to try and reason with you. I'm not going to try and talk about it. I'm just going to kill you. I like that idea because I feel like
that's not Luke Skywalker.
Yeah, exactly. It's not Luke. Like, it would have been, I could almost imagine, for example, say Kylo Ren had turned in this film, and then in the third film, maybe he shows up and he's like, or for example, maybe for example he doesn't turn, and the next time Rey sees him, Rey is like, I gave you a chance. I'm not gonna now. I'm just gonna kill you because like that makes sense because Rey. You can imagine Rey kind of having an angry dark side to her, and also she's young. Like that makes sense. It doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't make sense for Luke to. But yeah, I mean, we could also. Do you want to talk about kind of the whole is the Jedi bad now, or should we talk about that maybe during the plot? Is this the last one of your things, by the way?
Yeah, that was the last one. So yeah.
What's the next section? What's the next thing we're going to do?
It was just going to be the reaction.
Oh yeah, we'll do the reaction
Star
now,
Wars
and then we'll talk about the plot.
Okay. So basically, this movie was quite divisive. Star Wars: The Last Jedi. Critics love this movie. It has a 91% on Rotten Tomatoes because it was something different. As an example of that, you can have a look at Luke Skywalker, and obviously how he rejected the Force. However, Star Wars fans hated this. They hated this movie. It deviated from the norm. And obviously they hated it because of the same reason these critics liked it, because of Luke Skywalker. Now, my position is bad. My position is that this movie is a bad movie.
Yeah.
My position is a good position, but my position is that this movie is a bad movie. It's got so many problems and so many things that don't make sense. And I'm going to side with the fans in this one because I don't think, like we've mentioned just then, the Luke Skywalker thing can make sense. So I'd argue that the critics are definitely wrong. And I'd argue that the fans are right in saying it's a bad movie. But it's a bad movie because of more things than the fact that they ruined Luke Skywalker. There's more things wrong with it than that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just want to go back to like the critics praising The Last Jedi as it was something different, something fresh. You know, something unlike any other Star Wars movie previously. I remember around the time it was released, I saw a lot of reviews like that. Like, this is different Star Wars. This needed to happen in the Star Wars universe. Finally, the Star Wars universe has moved on to something bigger and better. And, you know, it's not like the others. This is great. But I just want to point out, like, well, why are Star Wars movies so popular? It's because they stick to a formula. What a formula that works, Michael. A formula that the audience likes. So if this movie goes too far in some places, like this movie did, they're not going to respond to it well. They might not like it, and they might not turn up for the next one. You just have to look at the box office openings for Solo to see that. Like, it's well below expectations. Like, Disney was expecting like $140 million for Solo, a Star Wars story, but it only got like $103 million.
Yeah.
So I think obviously Star Wars as a concept, and we've talked about this before, is limited. You can only do so much. But I think that's fine. People want this limited thing. They want like to have the good guys versus the bad guys, and they want to have like hopeful, optimistic, like light side Jedi against the dark evil Empire. Like that's what they want. That's why Star Wars is so successful. That's why it's such a cultural phenomenon. And it's why it's so popular. The thing is, Rian Johnson knew he was going to piss off fans by doing this. Yeah, like he did it anyway.
Well, yeah, I think I'm right in saying, and this might be doctored, I'm not sure, but there's an image around, and it's Rian Johnson holding up a sign, and it says like "Screw your Snoke theory," and I swear it's actually like I think it's actually real.
That's like George Lucas saying "hand shot first," wearing that T-shirt.
Yeah,
like just trolling like the fans. Like it's so weird for a franchise to treat its fans like that.
It genuinely, it does seem. But yeah, I think you're right. Some of what you're saying, I think, would be worth discussing in our broader topic about, or our broader discussion about Star Wars, our Star Wars special, which is probably going to be the next video we do, I guess. We're planning. So, but I definitely think you're right about one thing, which is it went too far. If you're going to have a film or a film series, then you do need to have a standard formula. You need, especially an action adventure film series. But obviously, then you do need to have occasional things to shake it up. So you have someone who's, you know, maybe slightly villainous. You have people who are kind of in the middle, and that's like fine. But you have to have them kind of be contrasted with a general coherent standard structure. So that's why, because Han Solo works really well. He is not a complete straight arrow hero, but he's within a context where the way his character developed makes sense.
Yes,
and even I mean the prequels did a better job at having kind of the structure of a story. They didn't do it right, but it's kind of like you could tell.
No, they did not.
Oh, yeah. But yeah, the other thing is about. So actually, I might let you. I was going to kind of move off. So.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to say, obviously, like when I was Ryan Johnson tried to change something in Star Wars that really didn't need to be changed, and obviously we can talk about that in our big Star Wars review that we do next. But I just want to say, at the time on Twitter, when the movie was released back in December, there were critics and just people on Twitter who weren't Star Wars fans that don't like, your stereotypical Star Wars fan. Obviously, the stereotypical Star Wars fan would be like in their 30s, with a beard and overweight. You know what I'm trying to say here?
Yeah, disgusting.
Yeah, and yeah, you got a lot of people on Twitter.
Rich Evans.
Yes, like Rich Evans, but Rich Evans actually isn't a Star Wars fan, which doesn't really jive.
He just plays a really convincing Star Wars fan.
Yeah, so a lot of these people on Twitter, who I guess would say they're more sophisticated than these Star Wars fans, seem to really enjoy, after the release, the fact that these, like, I'm putting this word in quotes here, pathetic Star Wars fans hated this movie and seem to gloss over all of its problems. And I think that's why this movie was so divisive. Like, a lot of Star Wars fans hated this movie, and I think a lot of people hate Star Wars fans. And I remember at the time, I think I might have said this to you, like, if you hate Star Wars fans, this is the Star Wars movie for you.
Yeah, I absolutely, and I was going to mention it, like, that is kind of, because that's kind of where I felt, or what I felt about this film, especially after Rogue One. Because this film, it's kind of like a weird film for people who hated Rogue One. Because obviously the thing with Rogue One, everyone was saying, is Star Wars fans loved it, and that's because Star Wars fans are wrong, and Star Wars fans, their opinion is just complete nonsense.
Yeah.
So then obviously this film comes out, and Star Wars fans hate it, and there was a part of me definitely that wanted to be like that likes the fact that this film annoys Star Wars fans.
But like that's just
I know, yeah.
Stupid.
It's a stupid, and the thing is, like, for example, I mean, I've liked several videos on YouTube that have like talked about how this film is good, and I've literally just liked them because I've seen but the thing is, okay, so there's a difference between liking I kind of, there's a part of me that likes the trolling and almost likes the sheer contempt, but not in like a way where I think it's a good thing, but I just it's kind of like, I like it the same way that I liked it when I've forgotten his name, the Liverpool goalkeeper.
Oh, Karius.
You saw this, yeah. when he conceded that goal.
Oh, that was when he
conceded both of them. Yeah, I liked it.
That was a great night.
It was so much fun. So yeah, I liked just the kind of
You like people just getting pissed off, basically.
Yeah, I think I like the kind of absurdity of it. I like the idea that it's just like everyone's so angry about this thing, and I agree. I wouldn't say, because I definitely think it is a weird film, because it's kind of like you go from Rogue One, which was complete fan service and terrible for that reason, and then I think the instinct is you get a film that is completely subverting fans and completely saying, the fans, we're not going to do this for the fans. We're just going to make our own like film that's going to completely go against everything that people love about the Star Wars franchise. You say there's too many lightsabers. We're not going to have a single lightsaber hitting another lightsaber. And yeah, it's tempting to be like, oh well, it's good. And I've heard people say that. I've heard people say like, well, surely people should like this film if they hated Rogue One because it's like the opposite to Rogue One. But not,
they're both bad movies.
Yeah, it's like there's a medium, and also like the other thing is, even if you ignored all of the stuff, and I guess you've kind of got to this point already, but even if you ignored all of the reasons why Star Wars fans hate this film, and like I say, because the thing is, my stance on every single one of the subversions we just listed pretty much was I would like each of those things in their own film handled differently. I don't think all of them together work, but I think you can have 2 or 3 of them in one Star Wars film and it would work, and if you had a good plot around it, it would be fine. So in my case, obviously for you didn't like the Rey thing, but in my case, literally every single one of those things that these Star Wars fans were angry about, I was completely fine with, apart from, number 1, the way it was handled in itself, and number 2, the wider context of the story. So yeah, even if you ignore all the things that the Star Wars fans are angry about, this film just doesn't hold up.
Well, like I said, I don't think some of this subverting expectations were interesting, but we don't want to go back over that.
No, yeah.
But I'll say this to sum up on this whole Star Wars fans and critics thing. It's like I'm unbiased. I think I'm objective on this, and they're both bad movies.
Yeah,
Like it's if you're defending The Last Jedi
because it annoyed the fans.
Yeah, because it annoyed Star Wars fans. Like, what the fuck are you doing?
That is, yeah. It's as stupid as the fans.
Yeah, and if you like Rogue One because you're a Star Wars fanboy,
Yeah.
and you're clearly blind and have no objectivity and don't know what you're watching and will just like watch anything that is about Star Wars and literally is Star Wars fan service and not evaluate the movie like a neutral observer would. So yeah, that's my take on that. They're both bad movies, and if you like either one of them, you need a reality check.
It's kind of hilarious in a way because it's like the hatred of this film because Star Wars fans like it is kind of it's almost dark sidian. You know, it's like you can imagine going to a reviewer like, your hatred of Star Wars fans has blinded you to the fact that The Last Jedi wasn't a good film, and the reviewer would be like,
yes, exactly.
No, I hate Star Wars fans, and Obi-Wan's like,
Yeah.
No, don't. Yeah, that is, yeah. You know what? I mean, that's the thing. I mean, for me, and this is a bit of a spoiler, but I struggle to. I think The Force Awakens, Rogue One, and The Last Jedi are all bad for really quite different reasons in every single case. And as you'll remember from last time, I didn't even know that clearly where to put Rogue One relative to The Force Awakens. I think they're all really close together, in my opinion.
Well, I think The Force Awakens is better than these two, yeah.
But yeah, they're all really different films. It's kind of interesting because it's almost like at this point the Star Wars expanded military cinematic universe is just like different ways to get. Because even for example, The Force Awakens, obviously you thought it was better, and I can understand that. But even then, like it had a very obvious criticism, which was that it was pretty much a remaking of. And that's like a completely different criticism to Rogue One, which was more like, well, it's not a remaking, there's nothing really that similar to Rogue One, but it is a lot of fan service. And then you got this one, which is, it's kind of insane just how many ways this franchise is finding to be terrible.
Yeah, and doesn't give a lot of hope. And obviously Solo, a Star Wars story, is like apparently worse than all three of them, if you go by the ratings. And also, we've got Episode 9 to look forward to.
Yeah, and Episode 9 is, I guess we can kind of talk about this at the end, but there's no way Episode 9 is going to be, there's just nothing they can do.
Yeah.
If they manage to make Episode 9 good, if I walk out of Episode 9 going, wow, that was a good film then whoever made it needs to win Best Director.
Oh, definitely.
So just, like, if someone's able to make Episode 9 good.
Yes.
Even with, anyway, should we move on to the plot now?
Yes.
Is that what you've got?
Yes, onto the plot. So the first
I
thing...
wanted to, oh wait, are you gonna, yeah.
Well, what do you want to talk about?
I want to say that my problem with the plot literally started with the first 4 words of the opening crawl.
Which one?
It said, I was watching it and I saw this, it said, the First Order reigns. And I was thinking to myself, like, I know that they've kind of established this in, the Force Awakens, but it's kind of like, in that context, like basically all the First Order have done is committed a massive terrorist act. And that becomes like the First Order reigns, and it's kind of like, okay. So it kind of, to me, it almost, it obviously I think that The Force Awakens kind of made the original trilogy pointless because, everything they'd fought for, they were now pretty much exactly back where they started, with a giant super weapon controlled by this evil empire, blah, blah, blah. But like, those first 4 words kind of really hammered the nail into the coffin, because it's like, okay, it's not even like, the First Order, it's not like there's a civil war. Like, a civil war would be kind of like equal sides. It's not like the First Order controls one part of the galaxy, there's resistance with the other. It's like the First Order reigns. And I was just thinking to myself, like, how did we get here? From being so excited at the end of the 6th film, at the end of Return of the Jedi, to now we just got 1 film later, and the start of the next film is just the First Order, and it literally might as well say Empire. The Empire reigns, and it's just like, what is the point in this?
Yes, so that's a good point, and we can talk about that in the big Star Wars review that we did.
Yeah.
But anyway, onto the plot.
Onto the actual plot.
So, first up, we've got some pointless and bad storylines to discuss. And there's 2 of these. There's the Holdo and Poe storyline, and there's the Rose and Finn storyline.
Yeah.
I labelled them pointless and bad, by the way, because that's how I feel about them.
I agree.
So let's start with Holdo and Poe first.
Which one do you prefer? Just
Probably Holdo and
of the
Poe,
two.
because
I
the
was going to say I prefer Holdo and
the
Poe.
amount of issues with the Rose and Finn one is just ridiculous. But anyway, Holdo and Poe first. So, obviously, the first one, and the the criticism that a lot of people had after coming out and watching the Last Jedi is, so why doesn't Holdo tell Poe about the plan to sneak off to Crate?
Yeah, I do want to say what I liked about this film, or what I liked about that plot line, which does relate to this, because yes, I agree, the Holdo and Poe storyline is better. It's still bad, but there is one thing I liked about it, kind of.
Okay, what did you like?
Which is, okay, so they established that Poe is kind of very like Han Solo-ish. He's cavalier. He is like so it kind of, and then in contrast to that you have the character of Holdo, who is I keep thinking of Game of Thrones Hodor, but anyway, Holdo, she is like kind of saying it's not about individual heroics. It's about, you can't just send people in to die because we're running low on troops and all that stuff, and it kind of, it makes sense that she has her reservations against Poe, which causes her to not say the plan. It's kind of dumb. I mean, it is dumb. It's objectively dumb.
Yeah.
But it at least makes some sense in that it's like.
Are you saying it gives Poe an arc?
It makes sense because I'm assuming, this is just kind of my assumption, that her assessment of Poe's character was that Poe would not be willing to sacrifice the ship, because Poe had previously shown that he was kind of more about destroying the Empire than preserving life, because he had sent all these people to die to defeat this.
Yeah, I know.
dreadnought.
But the thing is, okay, right. So I'll just go into this because I disagree with you.
Well, I'll probably agree with you saying it's stupid, but say what you want to say.
So the reason why this story is incorporated into The Last Jedi is to try and give Poe an arc, and also to show that I think there's a bit of a feminist message in there as well. Like, you should listen to a woman because they're smart too. Like Poe, when he sees Holdo for the first time, he's like, "Oh, wasn't what I was expecting." Like,
that was a dumb one.
Yeah, but I think so. That's why I think there was a feminist angle to this as well. I think the problem with this, obviously, is it's pointless. Like, the lesson that Poe learns, and the lesson that Holdo was trying to teach him, is to blindly follow authority, even when that authority, in Poe's eyes, obviously, is going to condemn them to death.
Actually, you're right, Luke.
Yeah, I am right. Like, that's the thing. You can say, oh, it was a good idea to have Poe, like, not be so cavalier, and not be this Han Solo type, and kind of mute him a bit. But the thing was, Poe was, like, right. Like, for all he knew, like, Holdo was going to kill them all, because she wasn't going to fight back, and he didn't know that she had a plan. And so,
yeah, that's true.
Yeah, if he just, like, does what, the moral of the story suggests, which is, like I said, blindly follow authority, and Holdo doesn't have a plan, well, they might all end up dead. So this whole message, and this whole character arc of Poe's is undercut by the fact that, as far as Poe knew, she was going to kill them all, or get them all killed.
Yeah, I think you're right. I guess I should say, so, I guess what I would say, and again, this isn't me defending the plot point, it's just kind of, I guess, offering like my idea of how it could have been better, really, is if they could have taken that idea of a character who implies, in some way, that their priorities are a bit out of whack. Because that's kind of what Poe does. He implies that he hasn't really got his priorities in the right place, because he's talking about how much of a hero he is, about how he just destroyed this big dreadnought, and meanwhile everyone else is kind of upset that these people have died. And that's like a clever thing to do.
Yeah, no, it's a nice character arc.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, it's a nice
the problem
idea.
is, obviously, it doesn't work because Ellie from Jurassic Park doesn't have a plan. I mean, well, yeah, it's not like it would make more sense if Ellie from Jurassic Park, Holdo, if she had like an alternative plan that Poe didn't like, but it was still a plan, and then it turned out that she had it would be a very difficult kind of thing to pull off.
Yes, it would be.
Like, this is the problem with twists, to be honest. The problem with twists is that you've got to have everything make sense, and also a twist that makes sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree. It was. I guess it's a good example of. I feel like this is kind of. It started off as an idea, that was just like a very vague idea, like a very abstract idea, and then they tried to like actually make it work practically, and they couldn't do it. But then Ryan Johnson, he was so married to this idea, he goes like, we've got to have it so Poe, he learns this lesson about taking life seriously, and not being willing to
sacrifice people's lives. Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
it was just done in a horrible way that didn't make any sense.
One more, are you done about that? Because there's one more thing I want to say about that.
Yeah, talk about that. Yeah.
Yeah, so I was noticing when Poe kind of does a mutiny, I was thinking to myself, I would have really liked it if they used blasters, like actual lethal weapons, because basically he says Poe, he does this mutiny, and then he's kind of like, if they move, stun them. And it kind of, I know that obviously this would be quite a dark turn, but I was thinking like it would be interesting to have kind of Poe show that because he was so against the establishment, establishment, like the hierarchy doing something he thought was wrong, that he was actually willing to be like, if they move, shoot them. And we didn't even, and the implication was shoot them dead. And then obviously when Holdo, escapes and there's like this gunfight, it would have been interesting if this internal conflict had lethal consequences. Of course, the problem is that the internal conflict was stupid and unnecessary, so obviously it wouldn't make sense for it to have lethal consequences. But I was thinking to myself, like, if they'd written it so there was a meaningful internal conflict that had a justifiable reason, then it would have been interesting to see kind of like a hero be, and obviously I'm not necessarily suggesting anyone would actually die, like maybe someone just gets shot in the arm, but there would be the implication of, they're willing to, because it's kind of just like, oh, just stun them, and it's like, well, if you can stun people, it's the problem with stunners existing in the universe.
Okay, Michael,
there's never really any reason.
Right.
There's never a reason for the good guys to kill anyone.
Yeah. Okay. Let's get back on point.
Stun Ren.
Yeah. Okay. Right. You made your point, Michael. You made your point.
I hate stunners.
Okay. So, yeah, and also I think there's multiple times in which Holdo can tell Poe. He brought up the mutiny. Like, that is a perfect example of when Holdo can say to Poe, no, we've got a plan. Like, we know what we're doing, okay?
Yeah, they basically, like, they had to break free, didn't they? And, like...
Yeah, it's just so stupid.
It's so unnecessary. Just, like, mess it...
So, it's ridiculous.
It gets more... It's one of those things where it gets more ridiculous the more
you think about
into it you get.
Yeah. In a $200 million movie to have like just such a simple like plot hole is just ridiculous.
Yeah, if he was just quietly grumbling about it throughout the entire film, and then like at the end it was like, oh look, actually we do have a plan, and he was like, okay, I thought you didn't have a plan, but you do. That would make more sense. But it's not like he's just saying like, oh, I wish we had a plan. He's actually going like, why do we have a plan?
Yeah, he was asking about the plan. Yeah, he could have been perfectly willing to go along with the plan if you just said, yeah, this is what we're going to do. But
yeah, and also like the thing is, even if like I guess the reason that they assumed that he wouldn't go along with the plan, but even if he didn't go along with the plan, just like there are loads of them, and it seems as if he was the only person. Now when you think about it, it's like they must have gone to a lot of effort to keep the secret. It seems like he was the only person on the entire ship who didn't know about this plan.
Yeah.
And you think like that must have been a lot of. They had to send it to the email.
Actually, no, because there was a mutiny, so other people weren't aware of it.
Oh yeah, actually, that's true. Yeah, there was a mutiny.
Right,
you're right.
So, even though we have
withdrawn my criticism.
Yeah, even though we have explained thoroughly why that Holdo and Poe storyline was stupid,
it gets worse.
It wasn't even the worst side storyline in the entire movie, which is pretty impressive. So the number one worst storyline was the Rose and Finn storyline. So the first thing I want to mention is that Rey and Finn were meant to have this connection. And now this Rose character comes in and is like apparently Finn's love interest, which is pretty unnecessary because obviously like even at the start of the movie Finn was asking where's Rey, and like Rey says if you see Finn, she says this to Chewbacca, if you see Finn tell him this. So they clearly still have this connection. But yeah, like Rose comes in and just fucks it all up. But yeah, so that I just wanted to say that. But yeah, so this side quest is pointless to say the least. Not only is it pointless, they fail as well at doing it. So it's like 30 minutes of runtime, just of pointlessness and failure. All it is designed to do is give these characters, Rose and Finn, or just Finn more specifically because Rose wasn't in episode 7, gives these characters something to do. Because Ryan Johnson realised he'd fucked it up when he wrote scripts which gave these guys an Poe as well. Nothing to do for half the movie. So yeah, this is all down to him. On Canto Blight, they decide to watch some horse racing instead of finding this master code breaker. Which, and by the way, the whole scene on Canto Blight was very prequelish. I don't know if you agree with that, but that's what
I can see that.
So Rose, so that basically what they do is obviously they get these horses, they escape using this master code breaker, even though it wasn't the one who was the only person in the galaxy who could break into the Empire ship. It was another one that they just happened to find in a jail cell. Fucking stupid. But then they break out of jail using these horses, or whatever, horse-like animals. And then when they escape and go up this cliff, Rose utters a completely bewildering line when Finn says, well, we didn't succeed getting the master code breaker, but at least it was worth it to free all these animals who obviously were being subjected to slavery and were being treated awfully. Then Rose then releases this last horse animal thing and then says, no, now it's worth it. Which, I don't know, has to be just one of the completely what? I called it bewildering. It's like one of those just what lines of dialogue? Did she just say that? That doesn't make any sense.
And it's so weird. It comes back to not planning ahead. This is a character that was just introduced here. So what do we it doesn't mean anything because we don't really know this character very well. And it's why not just stick with there's no character moments for characters who haven't been established. You shouldn't be having important character moments, characters who haven't been established in the second episode of your trilogy. It doesn't make any sense. It's so
you're right there. It doesn't make any sense for her to be in the movie anyway and have these lines. But I'm talking specifically about that line.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. The line itself. It's it's very weird because even if it's weird on two levels, because number one, who really cares? Who really cares about animals?
Well, she does apparently.
And then the other thing is that they must realize this is a very temporary solution.
Yeah, they're going to get captured right away. Yeah,
they haven't changed anything systematic about this society. They've literally just saved some horse bunnies from this, and probably some of those horse bunnies are going to get captured, and if not, then they're just going to capture some other ones.
Yeah, you know what, Michael? As I was thinking as they were escaping, this is all going to go back to normal in a month.
It's so pointless. It's worth, speaking of pointless, talking about the idea that obviously it ends in complete failure. It's a weird thing because obviously it's good to have the prospect that sometimes
they could fail.
The effort of a thing can go. That's why, for example, we love Terminator 3: Rise of the Machines.
No one loves that movie, Michael.
Because I kind of love it in a so bad it's good way. But at the end, obviously, the whole thing is you think that they're going to stop Judgment Day, but actually they've just been taken to this bunker, and they're in the bunker as the Earth gets nuked to oblivion.
You know what? That's fun though to watch in this movie. People failing.
It is.
I want to watch people fail.
Yes, it's good. Yeah, it's weird because I think obviously there should always be failures in a film. A film where there are no failures is probably not a good film.
No, you're right. Yeah, but the fact is they spend so much time on it, and it's just completely irrelevant.
And it doesn't really build anything up.
No,
it's
pointless. Completely pointless.
It's so bizarrely pointless.
Stupid. And it's all because Rian Johnson fucking decided to do this storyline that they were on a ship that kept on being tracked by the First Order.
It's such a weird. Everything about it is. See, the thing
is, he didn't need to do this, Michael. He didn't need to do this.
It feels like a Star Trek episode storyline. Because I don't know if you've ever watched an episode of Star Trek.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah. Because my dad's a Trekkie. Sometimes I'll sit there. He watches Deep Space Nine or whatever else, and every single episode is kind of this very minor thing. There's going to be this conflict, or someone's planning on assassinating this person, and most of the film, or most of the episode, is just kind of a soap opera. It's characters having their own interpersonal dramas, and then at the end of it, the minor space thing, the minor conflict that's driving the entire plot of the episode will be resolved. And that's literally what this B plot's like. It's just, they're on this ship, they're being chased. Like, you could literally imagine it as a Star Trek episode, and you've got the Klingons walking around like, oh, I'm angry with you because you won't just attack them, and then Patrick Stewart shows up and he's like, we will not allow our city, our base to become a weapon of war, blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
But it doesn't work in Star Wars.
Yeah, like Rian Johnson just did it to get these characters to do something, and that is never like, if you're trying to tell a story like Star Wars, that's never a good like strategy. Okay, what can we get these characters to do? Like,
yes.
Like that's not a good idea. If you start from that point, it's probably going to end up badly. So next up, continuing the Rose and Finn storyline, we have one of the, and you mentioned this earlier, one of the most stupid, ridiculous things I have ever seen in any movie ever. And this is when Finn is about to sacrifice himself to save the Resistance, which I think would have been significant. We talked about at the start how this, like, nothing happens that is significant in this movie. But that would have been, like, it gives his character an arc, it gives his character depth, it subverts our expectations in a good way, in the fact that it's a bold choice that works. If that had happened, I would have been like, wow, that's some move there, Rian Johnson, well done. I respect that. It would have been a great move. However, Rose then decides to clatter into Finn, meaning he's not going to crash into the massive laser, risking both of their lives without helping the Resistance. So they could have easily both have died in that crash, but they didn't. Then when Finn runs to Rose's ship or whatever, X-Wing, and says, why did you do that? Rose decides to utter a line even more bewildering than the first line in the movie, which we mentioned before. She says, that's how we're going to win. Not fighting what we hate, but saving what we love. Which might be even stupider than what she actually did. Like, it's just a line completely devoid of logic at all. When you're fighting a war, you're meant to fight what you hate. That's the whole point of war. I mean, was Luke Skywalker not meant to blow up the Death Star?
Yeah, it's such a stupid sentence, because the biggest thing about war is that we sacrifice what we love to. Yeah. The point of war is sacrifice. So you can't. It's almost like the exact opposite to the truth. Yeah,
like the first part is wrong because you actually do win by fighting what you hate. But yeah, the second part, saving what we love, you are meant to sacrifice, like you say, what you love. Like, that is war. Like, sacrifice your life for the Resistance, or in reality, your country. Like, that's war.
The other thing is, this line, it might make sense if what this film should have been was the case, which is this film should have been, or this film series should have been, obviously, about the Republic facing a insurgent movement, a small insurgent movement. And in that context, you could make an argument that it's reasonable to want to be kind of more conservative about sacrificing what you love,
Yeah.
Because there's opportunities, because but in this case, it's literally the last of the Resistance in this tiny place, this massive thing coming. Yeah, so it makes no sense. Like, this is the moment where it should be about sacrifice, not.
Yeah, the thing is, Michael, as she's saying that line, behind her, the Empire or the First Order is literally blasting this door with their laser and about to kill their friends. Like, literally, as she's saying that. Like, that's the thing. She's not even saving what she loves, because all the Resistance are about to die because of what she did.
Yeah, it's so weird.
It's so it's stupid. Like, did no one fucking look at that and say, you know what? I don't think this makes sense, and I don't think it works at all. I think perhaps we should change this.
Yeah, it feels almost like the emotional equivalent to a Zack Snyder film. In that the criticism of a lot of Zack Snyder films is that they do things that don't make sense, and they do them because it looks cool. That's Zack Snyder. He does things that don't really make sense, but they look cool.
Yeah.
In this, it's kind of like, it's something that doesn't make sense, but it's done because it's supposed to be, I guess, kind of impactful. Because it's kind of like, it's a line that obviously, if you completely turn off your brain and just go into, oh, that's nice mode, then it kind of works. It's like a nice idea. Oh, that's nice. Yeah, it shouldn't be about hating people. It should be about it's kind of typical stupid thing that someone would say 101. It's kind of like the people. Oh, actually, no. I was about to get political. I was about to say it's. I mean, it's like the people who basically say we shouldn't ever bomb, or it's like, well, people who say we shouldn't have bombed Syria, and they basically say, oh, so because Assad's killing his people, you're going to bomb them. And it's like, obviously, whether or not we should bomb Syria is a tactical decision. It's a very complicated decision. However, to simply say, well, if you intervene in the military conflict, then you're automatically a hypocrite, is just like a really stupid thing. And it's the exact type of thing that these people say. Like, we're not going to defeat Kim Jong-un by fighting him. We're going to defeat him by loving him. Well, what if these people around in World War II?
Well, yeah.
Who just stood outside stood outside Auschwitz, like, we're not going to defeat the Nazis by fighting what we hate. We're going to save what we love.
Yes. Yes, you are right. Yeah, I don't have anything to add, basically, Michael.
Yeah.
On this Reynolds and Finn storyline. Without doubt, one of the worst things I have seen in a movie, just because of how ridiculous and stupid it is. And I've said those words so many times, but it sums it up too well.
Yes.
I want to mention
one more.
All right.
I was going to talk about one more cleanup thing, and I thought we could talk just a little bit about Luke and Rey.
Wouldn't it make sense to talk about the pacing first?
Okay, yeah, sure, why not? What the hell, Luke? We'll just do it yeah, okay, pacing's fine.
Okay.
I actually wrote down, which is related to pacing, I wrote the plot needed to be tighter, but simultaneously broader. In that, it felt like it was, in one instance, all over the place. Because there was no real focus. It was like, you're going to go to this place to get a code breaker, and then it's like every single...
Yeah, it was a bit of a mess, yeah.
The Luke and Rey storyline was quite, tight, but the rest of it, especially the Canto Bight stuff, was completely just all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
And yet at the same time, it sort of needed to be broader, because there was no sense of flow to the narrative, because there was no sense of flow, because it was kind of, you had two very static storylines,
mm-hmm.
and then intersecting it, you had this storyline about these people going all over the place, but they were the people you cared about the least. Yeah. So it was like watching something that was moving, but not doing anything.
Yeah. I just want to say, so I'll just say this about the pacing. The pacing of this movie, The Last Jedi, is bad. Like, really bad. We talked about the problem with the story, but the way it's done is terrible as well. You have Luke and Rey on this island for like the first hour and a bit of the movie, which I think was really surprising. I thought they'd be there for 30 minutes tops. And I thought that would be the case because it's quite boring. It's fine, some of the scenes are fine, but it can get boring. Also, it means they're away from the main action, so when they get thrown back into the action, so many things would have to happen in a row, which is obviously what happened in the end. All the main action in the movie is reserved for the last hour. There's for the first hour and 30 minutes, pretty much no action happens. So there's, bits and pieces here and there. But
there's the space battle, obviously.
Yeah, there's the space battle, but things really, get into gear around the hour and 30 mark. A lot of shit happens after that. But the problem with that is when Kylo, and Rey fight Snoke's guards, I think that should be the middle of the movie. That would make sense if it was right in the middle. But the problem is it happens at the hour 50 mark. That's longer than some movies, and you're getting something which I think should be around the hour 10, hour 20 mark at the most, happening at the hour 50 mark. So the end just feels so long, because you got this massive build up, and then all of a sudden all this stuff happens. That fight, by the way, I think it should have been iconic, because you've got it was a pretty nice action scene. Two people with lightsabers fighting these guards. Nice visually. It should have been something that we would remember. Disregarding whether it was the right choice or not to have that. It should have been something that we all should have remembered as we came out of the cinema. But the problem is you have to sit through so much shit and pointless side stories. For example, obviously we've talked about Rose and Finn and Ho and Poldo, and there's also on the island with Luke and Rey, with Luke milking that alien's tit and fucking spearing that fish. You have to get through all of that to get to this point, and it's an hour and 50 minutes until you see this cool action scene. So it's not that exciting. I remember watching it in the cinema, and by the time it got to that point, I was like, I've seen so much. I'm just not really that bothered. I'm not that engaged anymore. And obviously, it has a really long runtime as well. It's 2 hours and 30 minutes.
Yeah, it's so long.
So there's no reason not to, and a big reason to do because of the pacing. cut a lot of those things from the first hour, particularly on that island.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think, especially when you compare, like, the prequels, they did a better job. Like, I'll say this, okay? The prequels don't have a problem with pacing. I don't think. I think the prequels, the plot is bad, but everything happens pretty much where it needs to. You take, for example, the bare bones of the Phantom Menace, which, like you say, is a 1 out of 10.
Mm-hmm.
But when you look at it, they go to this place, it pretty much establishes the conflict that they're going to invade Naboo. Then they spring into action, they rescue the princess, they go over, there's a little kind of midway point on Tatooine where they introduce a key character, then they go back, then they kind of go in to win the day. Like, that's a 1 out of 10 Star Wars movie, and yet really I don't think you can make any criticisms about the pacing. I'd argue that pretty much everything happens where it should be happening. And I think that's roughly the same for Attack of the Clones. Obviously, the plot's a bit weird, it goes off in 2 different directions, but you've got kind of action scene at the beginning, little kind of moment of discovery, a character moment. Obviously the character moment's terrible, hashtag I don't like sand. But then obviously then it picks up and you've got this massive battle at the end, all culminating with this thing. And yeah, like literally the prequels, the 2 worst prequels, there's no problem with the pacing. And again, I kind of go back to what I said about location and how most of the other Star Wars films, it's like they're going to these different locations, but it's kind of like the story is very obviously driving them there.
Mm-hmm.
He's got to go to Camino to investigate the darts, and then that leads him to Geonosis because he tracks Jenga's thingy. And again, obviously, I'm taking examples from the worst Star Wars films. And I guess I'll actually go back to what I said about it needing to be kind of broader but tighter. I think in a sense, tightness is broadness, because if you are being compelled to go all over the place, then that is a tight. I guess what I mean by tight is kind of like a linear series of events. So it's not like you're having to. This film, it felt kind of like a tree. It's like you've got this one thing that happens, and it's like, oh, we've got to do this and this because Holdo, she's got to do this. So you've got to go to Canto Bight, and we've got to go here, and it's like, okay, we've got to free these bunny horses, and we've got to rescue this guy. And it's like literally every single thing. It's kind of like all these things happening at once, and all these directions are going off, and then you think like the contrast to that is, this thing, the bad guys are doing this. We're going to stop them here, The bad guys are attacking us in Hoth, and they've brought these massive AT-AT walkers. We're going to send out our people to go around. Like, it's kind of, I guess that's what this film's missing. It's missing the clear sense of the bad guys are doing this. We're going to do this. Then this thing happens. Now I've got to do this.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of B stories in this movie, Michael, and that's the problem with a lot of B stories that you articulated. Like, everything is happening, like you've got all these side stories, but again, nothing's happening at the same time because there's no singular focus, because all of these stories are B stories. So naturally, they don't have as much importance as the A story. But there doesn't seem to be an A story in this movie.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, obviously they could have done a film that has just as many B stories is Lord of the Rings: The Two Towers. Have you seen I feel like you haven't seen Lord of the Rings.
I have seen Lord of the Rings, but I haven't seen it in a while. A good example, actually, would also be Infinity War, which has a load of B stories, but you have Thanos running throughout all of the movie, so you've still got Thanos, yeah. But in this, obviously, there's no Thanos running throughout all these B stories.
Yeah, because in Lord of the Rings: The Two Towers, just to kind of talk about that,
okay, yeah,
it's kind of like they're both trying to get to, or you've got Sam and Frodo, they're trying to get to Mordor, and then you've got Merry and Pippin, they're trying to get to Isengard. Isengard is allied with Mordor, and then Isengard is attacking Aragorn and Legolas and Gimli in Helm's Deep, and it's kind of like it's broad. It's going all over the place. You've got this massive, giant world, and they're all over it, and yet it's tight in that it's connected by this very common goal. And in this, there's a sense in which Rey learning about it's almost like you kind of. There's a bit where Luke Skywalker says, like, "Why do you even need me? What are you here for?" And it's kind of like he says, like, he literally is like, "What are you here for?" And I was thinking to myself, like, yeah, what is she there for? Like the rest, it doesn't. It's kind of like there's not even that much of it. It's not like I've got to learn so I can save my friends. It's kind of just like she's like, oh, I want to.
No, she doesn't actually say she's Force sensitive or whatever, which I was surprised at. Like, Luke has to notice it out of her, which is again like Rey. Well, I want to talk about Rey's character at the end.
I was going to talk about the Rey and Luke stuff a bit. Are we done with pacing?
Yeah, I think we're done with pacing. I want to talk about characters now.
That's fine. I haven't got that much to say about character. Well, You talk about characters first, because I haven't got as much to say.
Okay, so characters. I put 3 characters down that I wanted to talk about, because I think we talked about the rest, really, in good detail. And even if we haven't, we don't need to talk about the others.
Mm-hmm.
So, Kylo Ren is the first character.
Yes.
He is the shining light in this movie. He
is
the best thing about this, because he is such a interesting character. He's such a fascinating character. And I just think, like, his conflict within him and the way he, like Adam Driver portrays Kylo Ren is just brilliant. Like, he's just the best thing about this movie, hands down.
Yeah, you are. I mean, he was the best thing about Force Awakens, and he's the best thing about this film. I feel like in this film it just like stands out even more. But it is annoying because obviously, so many of the kind of I think the classic one, and possibly the worst one in terms of like could have been good but wasn't in terms of the subversions, was the killing of Snoke.
Yes.
Like, that is the number one thing that I think we can agree of all the subversions. Obviously, you didn't know, some of you actively disliked, but of all the subversions, the killing Snoke one was in principle the best one by far, because Snoke is a completely boring, irrelevant character, and it's really interesting to have this character who is actually interesting defeat him and kind of take his place. And yeah, obviously it's just embarrassing. Like, it's like kill the one who's against you, and you can just but yeah, like it's such a good idea, and it's frustrating. He's so good that it's frustrating.
That is true. Next up, I wanted to talk about Captain Phasma.
Oh, really? I've heard people mention Captain Phasma. In fact, actually, it's on my... Sorry, I'm just going to harken forward a bit, because we've probably covered almost all of them at this point, but I wrote down a list of 10 reasons, as I mentioned. I wrote down a list of 10 reasons why people hate these films, because I kind of saw them around, and number 7 on that list, according to my research, is the death of Phasma.
Yes. So, the thing is with Captain Phasma, she was meant to have a big role in The Force Awakens. Or she wasn't meant to. She was shown in the trailer and there was all a hype around it because, like, oh, it's a stormtrooper, but she's silver. And the actor who plays Captain Phasma, I've forgotten her name, but it is Gwendoline Christie. That's it. That's who plays Captain Phasma.
Christie?
Gwendoline Christie. And the reason why I bring her up, because I saw it in an interview done by Gwendoline Christie, that she said that people came up to her on the street and said, oh, my little girl loves Captain Phasma, or is inspired by Captain Phasma. And I was like, that didn't happen. That was my reaction. Nah, that did not happen. You're making that up. I mean, like, there would have to be some crazy Star Wars fans to think that, because number one, she's not in The Force Awakens much at all, and number two, the bits of interaction that she does get with characters in The Force Awakens kind of shows she's a bit of a pushover, not that menacing at all, and somebody to be made fun of. And in this movie, and the thing is, we didn't even mention her in our Force Awakens review, Michael. That's how insignificant she was.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, I mean, I know that she was in it, but...
Yeah. So, in this movie, again, like, she dies, like, she shows up for, like, 5 minutes and then she dies right away.
She's like a garbage Boba Fett.
Yeah, she is. A discount Boba Fett. Like, she's just awful. And, I just find, like, that interview with Gwendoline Christie talking about how much Captain Phasma can inspire little girls. I mean, search it on YouTube, you'll find it.
I'm actually looking forward to watching this.
Just looks like funny. Even funnier after this movie. Because it was, there was kind of a bit of hope, right, okay, maybe we'll see Captain Phasma, show what she's got, show her talents. But no, she gets into a fight with Finn and dies. So, there you go. Captain Phasma, the hopes were so high for her. But unfortunately,
and Finn held his own, like, everyone talks about Mary Sue, but Finn was able to, like, kind of, I don't know what the weapon is that they used, but they were using, like, some kind of weird electro hammer thing, and he was, like, fighting with her, and he was doing a pretty good job.
He was, yeah.
And it's like, I don't know, she's, like, it's weird to me that she's a character.
Yeah, she was just, like, she was just there to sell toys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just so weird.
Yeah.
I
mean, it's not weird if you care about money.
You don't even see her face, do you?
You see her eye.
I mean, you see her eye, yeah.
I was thinking, like, is it easy to tell that she's a woman?
Yeah, I was thinking that. Like, I wasn't actually sure, she looked like a woman, but I was thinking, it's just a bit weird. And the other thing is, just an aside, people walk up to her in the street and say, like, my kid is inspired by you. Presumably, like, their kids don't even know what she looks like.
No, yeah. Okay, so that's Captain Phasma. I just wrote next to her name Pathetic. That sums her up pretty well.
Yep.
Captain Pathetic. Next up, we got General Hux. Who,
oh, yeah.
is again, just quickly on this guy, he's comic relief in this movie. There's a bit at the start where Poe Dameron makes a "your mother" joke. I'm holding for your mother. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. You know what? I think seeing as you've mentioned that, because that's the one thing I wrote down. The humor in this film, and a lot of the humor seems to be quite Hux. Well, I guess I feel like Hux, he's like the straight man, like he's the person taking it seriously, and everyone else is just having fun.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, but it doesn't work. The humor is just too.
Yeah.
It's just too weird.
The thing is, though, Hux, like that's the thing. This movie, the way this movie treats Hux, is emblematic of how this movie treats Star Wars as a whole, like the concept. What?
I'm just thinking it's like this film basically takes Star Wars and force chokes it and throws it to the ground and drags it across the room. Yes,
it does do that. It does do that. But I was talking about how it basically like Hux. The thing is, if these Star Wars movies were serious and actually good, then Hux would be a menacing, serious character. He would be like the equivalent of Tarkin in the originals. You know, like Tarkin wasn't going to get like pushed around and made fun of. He wasn't a lick spittle. Like Hux is though, and the fact that Hux is like a comic relief character shows like, oh, don't worry, don't take this so seriously. The Empire or the First Order aren't that big a threat. Don't worry about it, because obviously this General Hux guy, he's just a fucking idiot. So like it removes the tension, makes the story less powerful, and yeah, it's just pretty depressing that they decided to make Hux like this.
Hux,
goes to show
again,
how wrong they are about. Sorry, I'm getting full text. How wrong they were about making this like kind of a more light-hearted Star Wars. No, like make it like the originals. Like the bad guys are meant to be like bad and not played off a comic relief.
Yeah, I mean the thing is like you can have humor. Like for example, I mean a classic line is the line, "Do you want to buy some death sticks?" And Obi-Wan Kenobi's like, "You don't want to sell me death sticks. You want to go home and rethink your life." And that's a funny. Again, I'm using the example of the worst films, but that line, it's like a chuckle moment. Like I think there are at least a couple of chuckle moments. At least for some reason, Attack of the Clones has a few genuinely funny moments in it. I like the bit when C-3PO he gets his head. It's funny. He gets his head stuck on a battle droid, and he's like, "Die, Jedi dogs!" And like, I mean, not good films, but it's a perfectly fine joke.
Yeah.
And it's not like, I guess it's kind of, I feel like I mentioned this when we were talking about Daddy's Home, and I mentioned the difference between like, actually it might have been Deadpool, the difference between like a joke that kind of is there and it doesn't, it's just naturally written into the story, like characters doing funny things, and then jokes that say, "Hello, I'm a joke. Laugh at me. Am I being funny, guys? Hey guys, it's me, Mr. Joke. Laugh at me." And that's what the humor in this is. It's like, "Oh, hi guys, my name's Poe Dameron. I'm making a your mama joke. Laugh at me. Am I being like Marvel?"
Yeah.
And it's embarrassing.
It's embarrassing.
Nothing funny. There's nothing funny about trying to be something you're not, Luke.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Right. On to the last character and the last thing before we wrap up, if that's okay with you.
I actually need to say a few things before we do wrap up.
About Rey?
Yeah.
Well, that's who we're going to talk about.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. That's it for saving Rey to the end. So, Rey. So this movie is meant to be about Rey. But she doesn't, again, like I mentioned this in The Force Awakens, she doesn't seem conscious of the fact that doesn't seem conscious of the fact that she has the Force, that she has this power. She doesn't mention it to Luke on the island. Luke has to bring it up. Obviously, in The Force Awakens, she didn't bring it up to Finn either. Like she just like, "Oh, I have this Force power. Oh, well, that's cool." And yeah, she doesn't really seem to be that bothered about becoming a Jedi. Like there's no motivation from her about this. And obviously, in the first one, that's okay because you're just setting things up. But in the second one, you got to develop Rey's character now. And because obviously she's meant to be the main character. She's meant to be like the Luke Skywalker person of this sequel trilogy. But there's like she's not even involved in the crescendo at the end of the movie, the climax.
Yeah,
like, she's just picking people up from the side of a mountain. Like she's not even involved in that. Like she in this movie is really insignificant to the whole story. Like she should be front and center at the end of the movie, like doing something to help the rebellion, or maybe if she'd been turned, hurting the rebellion. I don't know. But the fact is she went back to the good side, or she was never going to go to the dark side anyway. But like she's just I don't know. It should this movie should be we should learn more about Rey. She should develop more. This should be a movie where we get to know more things about Rey, what makes her tick, what's her personality like. Does she have any fears? But there's nothing. There's nothing. It's just completely bare, and that is again a real shame. A real shame.
Yeah, I wanted to say a few things about Rey. First of all, we mentioned Kylo Ren. I think it's worth pointing out that I really liked the everything leading up to the Rey and Ren moment. The bit when the whole thing with them kind of force ghost talking to, or not force, force talking to each other, and the bit when they touch each other's hands. Again, it's a classic example of of really good stuff in an average film. I would say that the Rey stuff was it wasn't action. And I wouldn't necessarily say it was boring, because I think obviously you have to have this quiet, slow moments to complement the action moments. I think the problem with the Rey stuff was more that there wasn't. If the B plots would have been more action packed and adventurous, then the Rey stuff would have been fine. The problem with the Rey stuff is it was the B plots were complete bullshit. So you kind of had the film. It almost felt like a drama. It wasn't, because the only bits of action and adventure you were getting were in the stuff you didn't even care about, and if you tried to care about it, you were driven insane by how nonsensical it was. So then the only stuff that was actually interesting was pretty much this character drama almost between Rey and Ren and things like that. The other things are there were quite a few things I liked about Rey. I found it, like you said, kind of bizarre that she had so little to do with the end of the film. She obviously had the moment with Kylo Ren, which was probably more towards the end than it should have been, as you said. But I did like the fact that
I said it should be more towards the middle.
Oh yeah, sorry, more towards the middle.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't know why. I just misspoke there.
Yeah.
I liked the lifting rocks reincorporation. I think I actually smiled at that, because I thought, oh yeah, because she made a joke where she was like, I thought the Force is just you lift up rocks, and then Luke says that's not what the Force is, and then Rey, she sees some rocks and she lifts up the rocks. I thought that was a good moment. But again, I would have been okay with her not having much of a dramatic climax here, but she should have kind of had more of a moment with Kylo Ren and that kind of stuff. She basically just gets shouted at and then gets angry and then explodes the lightsaber pretty much with the Force. That stuff. Sorry, I'm saying a lot of alarms. I just realised. How embarrassing. Do you have anything? The final thing I wanted to talk about pretty much was... Oh, actually, there's one other thing that I really liked. The scene where they play Leia's hologram from the...
that was good. That was good.
I thought that was a nice moment.
That was nice. See, there are some good things about this movie, like you said, but they're scattered, scattered in a way where you can't actually grab onto something. It's bits and pieces here and there. It's really frustrating to watch these good pieces just get smothered by all the shit.
Yeah, they say it's like looking for a corn in shit. Maybe you'll find a few bits of corn to make some popcorn, but you're going to have to be going through a lot of shit. A lot of corny shit. The last thing I wanted to talk about was Luke and the whole Jedi thing. First of all, the bit where Luke Skywalker said they don't need Luke Skywalker, I thought that was it could have been a good springboard for a kind of critique of hero worship and why is it that they need this person to come in and save the day just because he did this cool thing in the past? Why can't they just stand on their own 2 feet? And also, I guess
it gives them hope.
I was going to say I'll open up this Pandora's box again and say it works well with the Rey's parents or nobody reveal, because obviously if Rey was basing it on the fact that a lot of Star Wars fans were thinking, oh, I want Rey's parents to be someone. A lot of people wanted Rey to be a Skywalker. A lot of people wanted Rey to be Luke's daughter. So obviously I feel like that kind of Luke saying you don't need Luke, or you don't need me, was kind of like playing into the whole, why does it matter if Luke's got anything to do with anything? It felt kind of like self-aware.
So you're basically criticizing the stereotypical tropes of a Star Wars / hero movie or a superhero movie. Like, I mean, why do you need this big hero? Why do you need like this interesting backstory?
And again, I should say, like I said before, that's an interesting thing, but like I say, you would have to have that in you can't have too much of that stuff at once. So obviously, you could have.
It's meant to be entertaining, then, Michael. Isn't that the point?
I agree. But I would say you can have a hero saying you don't need me, but you can only have that in the context of like the rest of the film functioning well as a conventional Star Wars film.
Okay, I guess so.
So yeah, but I agree with you that it doesn't work when they take it too far.
Mm-hmm.
And the final thing, I guess, is the whole topic of should the Jedi still exist? Which to me, it felt, the weird thing about it was they seem to be setting up this whole narrative of we don't need the Jedi anymore. The Jedi, there are a few kind of lessons that he has about why the Jedi shouldn't exist. He says like, the Jedi, they claim the Force for themselves. But the weird thing is all of that is completely, at the end he says basically, I won't be the last Jedi, and it cuts to Rey.
Mm-hmm.
So Rey's going to be, a Jedi.
Yeah.
But it's like, why? It's not, because like I said, I mean, obviously we're supposed to believe that he was jaded and cynical, and now he isn't jaded and cynical. But they also went a long way towards establishing that his criticisms of the Jedi were not just personal criticisms. It wasn't just him saying, I'm cynical and I don't like them. It was him actually offering critiques of the Jedi. But then at the end, he's like, but the Jedi are going to stay around.
Yeah, it's inconsistent, Michael. It
Yes.
doesn't really know what it wants to do.
Anyway, I think, there's one last thing I want to say about the plot before we're done.
Okay, go for it.
And this is about the Leia stuff, because I haven't really had a place to put this in. When Leia when Leia went off into space and then floated back, I remember thinking to myself, the first time I saw it, I thought she was actually going to die, and I thought to myself, that would be crazy if she actually died. And the funny thing is, that is how Admiral Akbar dies. But it's kind of like one of those, I was thinking to myself, it's one of those moments where it's like, if you're going to have like a kind of crazy senseless death, or like a death that just kind of happens pretty much off screen or whatever, or unexpectedly, then it has to be of a major character. It kind of feels like a bit lame to be like, Admiral Akbar was killed off screen. And it's like, well, if Leia was killed, abruptly and suddenly, then it makes sense because we care about Leia. But if you're going to have Admiral Akbar die, then it should be like something we actually see so that we can feel about it. Because, if Leia would have died in that scene, like, first of all, it would have made so much more sense for her to die in that scene.
Yeah.
If Leia would have died in that scene, then I would have been like, okay, that's cool. That's like established a precedent of, people, no one's invincible, people can just die like really suddenly. This is a war with serious consequences. I would say that made her floating back even more annoying. Yeah.
I agree.
So, pretty much, I did have my list of 10 reasons. We've actually covered actually, there's one last one, which I kind of just want to ask your opinion about. I think everything else we have. Yeah, okay, we've covered everything else apart from the scene where Holdo sends the spaceship at light speed into the cruiser. A lot of people don't like that scene because they say that
I love that scene.
They say that it creates a plot hole of why doesn't everybody just do that all the time? What's your opinion on that, Luke? Because it's quite a common criticism.
It could have taken a long time for her to get the ship around.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know, maybe it hasn't happened before because, blowing up the Death Star. Why didn't they do that to blow up the Death Star? Or, well, maybe the Death Star's shield was too powerful.
Yeah, the thing is,
I don't know, but I just think it is possible to make it work and not be a plot hole. I think it is possible, but also it's a really nice scene as well.
Yeah, there's a video on YouTube called "Why This Scene Destroys Star Wars," and it is that scene. I haven't even watched the video. I actually might watch it after this because I'm curious. Yeah. But it's kind of it's supposed to be saying like, Why they just, to me, it kind of like, I don't understand how anyone can really complain about plot holes in Star Wars. Like, it's the most broken, incoherent. Even the good films, like, there's still going to be a whole load of plot holes. So yeah, I just thought that was worth bringing up because it was on surprisingly, it was on a lot of people's lists of reasons why they didn't like this film. So with all that out of the way, are you ready to wrap up?
Yeah. So I'll go first. So I think this Star Wars movie, Star Wars: The Last Jedi, shows a couple of things. That creative people should not be allowed to do what they want. I mean, they should be allowed to do what they want, Michael, but they also need like somebody to rein them in. We saw this with the prequels with George Lucas, and we've seen this with Rian Johnson here in The Last Jedi. He did what he wanted, and it did not work. Disney should have reined him in. So this was a failure from Rian Johnson, I think, this movie, but it was also a failure from Disney. And I can't believe, of all people, that Disney allowed Rian Johnson to do this. That was very surprising. And I think like they won't be making that mistake again. Certainly based on the reactions that fans had to this movie. And obviously one of the reasons why fans didn't like this movie was because of the subverting expectations, and we talked about that. I thought they were done poorly, and some shouldn't have been done in the first place. For example, Rey's parents being nobody, after the big setup that they were somebody in Episode 7. Subverting expectations should only be done to make things interesting and entertaining, and to add to the story. When that isn't being done, and it's just done because, oh, look, this would be another way, it would be unpredictable, you weren't expecting that, then yeah, okay, it's something different, but then again, like, I'm not being entertained, like, it's not a fun story, if that's the case. Also, we mentioned that there's a load of insignificant B stories, with no A story. This movie really is about nothing, doesn't have, like we said, an A story, the main plot at which we can point to and say, yeah, this is what this movie is all about. And I think we can probably talk about that as a whole. That criticism can also be labelled at the whole sequel trilogy, which we can talk about when we do the main Star Wars review. Also, awful pacing, and the characters, like the character choices were really bad with Phasma and Hux and Rey as well. No development on her end, even though she's the main character. Kylo Ren, the one good thing about this movie, which is consistent. But I can't believe people think this was a good movie, Michael. It just goes to show, like, you can't trust the critics, and I'm glad we get to do these podcasts, because I'm glad we can, like, thoroughly examine The Last Jedi and go through it and just nail, time after time, what is so bad about this movie. And I really don't understand if somebody were to listen all the way through this movie, even somebody who liked The Last Jedi, listen to this all, and then come out of it thinking that it was a good movie. It just wasn't a good movie, and I'm sorry that's not the case because I'm a Star Wars fan, but I was disappointed when I came out of the cinema, and yeah, I have to rewatch and get all those issues that I had with it just were reconfirmed. So I'll say this, when giving it a rating, I think it is very similar to Rogue One. It's worse than The Force Awakens, very similar to Rogue One, but I can imagine watching Rogue One again more than this movie, probably because of the pacing. Like, they both have problems with it, but Rogue One's shorter, doesn't really have the pacing issue. Things happen. Like, you have to wait for the hour 50 mark for something like really interesting to happen. And so that's why I'm going to give it. I gave Rogue One a 5 out of 10, so I'm going to give this one a 4.5 out of 10. So slightly worse than Rogue One. And there we go. That's it.
Yeah. Well, the good thing about you going first is that you do cover a lot of what needs to be said most of the time.
Thank you.
So yeah, for me, I mean, like I said, what I said about this film when I was asked my initial opinion was this film was a lot of good ideas with a lot of terrible ideas all coming together to form a story that just doesn't work, and that's kind of it. I mean, there are a lot of these ideas make sense from the perspective of wanting to diversify the Star Wars franchise and wanting to kind of deal with the criticism. It's very hard to watch this film without thinking of it as a statement on the Star Wars franchise as a whole and a statement to Star Wars fans and also critics of Star Wars. Every single, or so many of the decisions made in this film, you can't help but feel like it's kind of saying, oh, well, you think this? Well, this. And there's obviously a merit to having that attitude of, I'm going to do things differently, you don't know what to expect from this franchise. That's a good thing to do to, make a franchise interesting and unique. The problems for me, number one, is I think you can kind of break the problems down threefold. Number one, too many of these unique decisions. Okay, if you want to do a Star Wars film and not have a single person use a lightsaber, have it be completely about kind of, wider power struggles, spiritual struggles, things like that. That's a good thing. I mean, for example, a Yoda solo movie. A lot of people are saying there should be a Yoda solo movie. That would be fine for a Yoda solo movie. If you want to do a Star Wars film where the idea that the main character will have this kind of lineage, or the idea that something the main character places a lot of hope in, like that their parents will return, is met with, well, actually, your parents, they're not going to return, they're just scumbags, then in my opinion you can do that. If you want to do any kind of massively subversive thing, a story about an ancient hero like Luke Skywalker who has abandoned any kind of... I mean, for example, the Obi-Wan Kenobi solo movie is probably going to be a bit like that, almost certainly. So they're all good things, but especially if the point of this is to say, look, Star Wars is different, Star Wars can do all sorts of different things, go in all sorts of new directions, well, if the point is that Star Wars has all this variety, then why not save some of that variety for later films? It seems like now, not only is there no, not only can they only go in the direction of kind of standard Star Wars story formula, but anything they do now to go against standard Star Wars formula has already been done in this film. So it's like, where do you go from here? So that's the first problem. Too much of this stuff. Second thing, obviously, too many stupid, unnecessary plot holes, stupid dialogue, stupid plot structure. Everything around these ideas was just complete stupid. It's like somebody took pebbles, someone built a house and they got these pebbles, and the pebbles were the good ideas, and then instead of cement they used horse shit, and they decided to use the horse shit as manure for the pebbles. And then finally, the problem with this film is that Force Awakens wasn't that great. Some of the problems with this film were inherited. The fact that it's still very difficult to get away from the fact that this does kind of feel like just an alternative history or an alternative scenario for the original trilogy. It doesn't feel like its own unique thing. There are still a lot of inherited problems, and this leads on to just the final thing I'd like to say is kind of a thought on this. Where is this film going to go with episode 9? Because episode 9 is going to inherit a lot of problems, and I guess what I've heard people say, I think what they said in the Red Letter Media review is, I'm not at all excited for episode 9. And to be honest, I wasn't very excited for episode 8 either. I kind of thought to myself, well, I wasn't really that interested to see what would happen after episode 7. I'm even less excited for episode 9. And the only thing I'm thinking is, I'm morbidly curious where they can go from here. And like I say, if they manage to make a good episode 9, which I think is almost impossible, if they manage to pull it off, then have that guy direct Star Wars for the rest of his life, because I think it's J.J. Abrams is doing episode 9. And that's the thing, I wouldn't expect it, because I don't think episode 7 was very good.
Well, I'm just going to say, Michael, you say episode 9, it'll be a miracle if it's good. Like, the way these critics review these Star Wars movies, it's probably going to be like 90% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah. But all in all, I felt this film, it didn't have a sense of mystery, or it didn't have anything to drive it. There was especially the B-plot. Well, like I say, I'm happy. Pretty much, I think you could just about get away with changing nothing about the Rey and Luke and Kylo stuff. I think possibly you would have to slightly get the Rey and Kylo scene slightly further forward and then add more stuff after that. Maybe you could even have one of Luke's lessons for Rey come after she confronts Kylo. You've got to have a way to get kind of that forward. But ultimately, the main problem for me was with the two B plots. They needed to have a sense of, we need to be here for this reason, and then have people you care about doing that, not throwing in this random character we've never seen before. All in all, I'm pretty comfortable placing this film below both Rogue One and The Force Awakens. So between The Force Awakens and Tomb Raider is where I'm going to place this film. Which is, it's weird because, like I say, there's this film. It didn't even feel like a Star Wars film. It felt more like kind of an opinion on Star Wars films. It feels like this is somebody saying, well, my opinion is that Star Wars films should be more diverse, that Star Wars films should defy your expectations of Star Wars. And it's like, I agree with that to an extent, but, you know, an opinion's one thing. You've got to get that opinion in a film that's actually good.
So,
basically.
like, it felt like a complete, like, rejection or just insult to Episode 7. That's what it felt like. And obviously Episode 7 is standard Star Wars. By the book Star Wars. This felt like, we're just going to shit all over Episode 7.
It felt like this film wanted me to like it because I, in some sense, agreed with its premise. The premise of this film is, you know, Episode 7 was formulaic. Star Wars as a whole is getting quite formulaic, therefore we're going to do all these new diverse things. And yes, I agree with that premise, but no, that doesn't.
What does Kylo Ren say? Let the past die, kill it if you have to. Yeah, swap.
Yeah. That's kind of very meta.
Yeah, very meta. Rian Johnson knew what he was doing. And when that guy licked his finger and said, salt, like, Rian Johnson knew what was coming. Like, you remember that guy on Crate who puts his finger into the... Yeah. That was like, there's no reason to have that in, is there? So I think that was a meta moment as well. I don't know, but I reckon it was. Because I don't know why you'd have that in if it wasn't to just...
I found that a really weird line, actually. And it didn't occur to me, but that's probably what that's probably what it means.
Yeah.
Wow. Rian Johnson.
He hates Star Wars fans. Like, it's so weird. Like, these movies are making $2 billion and you just want to fucking fuck it all up. Like, and piss off the fans.
So funny.
Anyway, we'll talk about that in our review later about the whole Star Wars universe.
Really weird film though. I almost want to say this film isn't even bad. Like there's this thing people say in philosophy. Well, I say philosophy in the section of the internet that likes to pretend to be philosophical while just complaining about other people, and they say like not even wrong. I think there's an entire website for it, and it's basically when somebody says an argument that is so incoherent and just kind of like nonsensical and almost like not even trying to be logical that you say it's not even wrong. Like you can't even. Wrong ceases to apply, and that's kind of how I feel about this film. It's not even bad.
Well, it's not wrong or bad, but it's not entertaining.
Yeah, it feels like it's not even trying to be a film.
Yeah, it's not trying to make you be excited or like want to come back. It's trying to teach you a lesson. It's trying to like tell you something. It's trying to lecture you.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like 50 Shades of Grey.
Is it?
Yeah. Why not?
All right. It's like 50 Shades of Grey. There we go. And that is the best review you'll ever hear of Star Wars The Last Jedi.
The entire reason we started this podcast.
Yeah, definitely. So thank you, Michael, for being with me and discussing this. It's been a long one, that's for sure.
Yes. Looks like it's time for sleep now, Luke.
Yeah.
At this late hour.
Time to go to bed. So who have you been, Michael?
I've been Michael.
And I've been Luke, and we have been selecting and reflecting on Star Wars The Last Jedi. Episode 8.
Oh, goodbye.
Goodbye. There we go. Yeah, there we go. Yeah. Right.
Oh, that's fun.